So let me call the meeting to order. It's 4:05 p.m. This is a special meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. It's Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 4:05 p.m. And Ms. Kendall, will you please give us a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mayor Peak,
Here.
council members Emilio,
Here.
Coletti,
Here.
McAdams,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Tomlinson,
Here.
Councilmember Paduri.
Here.
Here's all are present via Zoom meeting.
Do we have any members of the public in our meeting, Ms. Kendall?
I do not see any members of the public.
Oh, well, I missed a step, approval of the agenda. And with this agenda, I recommend that we have a definite time for starting item B, which is conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Monarch Pines Homeowners Association, that we start that at or no later than 5:15 p.m. So with that recommendation, may I have a motion to amend or to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Paduri.
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
Emilio.
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the agenda with a definite start time of 5:15 as to closed session item B.
Thank you very much. We have 4 items on the agenda: conference with labor negotiators, who are myself, council members Emilio and Smith. That's with the city manager employee contract amendment. The second one is conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Monarch Pines homeowners. The third item is also conference with legal counsel pending litigation, City of Pacific Grove versus the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration regarding Measure L. And the fourth item is conference with real property negotiators, portions of Sloat Avenue and Ocean View Boulevard. That's in regards to the ATC proposed project. And if we don't have any public comment for the public, if you would reconfirm that, Ms. Kendall.
Yes, we have nobody from the public in the meeting, Mayor Peak. So with
Okay.
that, I will remove those that do not need to be a part of this meeting, including our IT and AMP, and then I will make you host.
Again, good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. It's Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And I'll turn to our city clerk. Would you please take a roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Peak,
Here.
council members Emilio,
Here.
Coletti,
Here.
McAdams,
Here.
Paduri,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
and Tomlinson.
Present.
Thank you. All are present via Zoom webinar.
Thank you. And Councilmember Smith, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
States of America,
and to the republic
Republic,
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the agenda. City Manager Harvey.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor. City staff would like to request that the city council consider continuing item 11B, the appeal of the planning commission decision, to the July 7th city council meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I move that we approve with that amendment.
Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Yes, I just want to confirm that second was Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Council members Tomlinson,
Aye.
Smith,
I think you called me, so aye.
yes, thank you. Paduri?
Aye.
McAdams?
Aye.
Coletti?
Aye.
Emilio?
Aye.
Mayor Peak?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the agenda, continuing 11B to the July 7th, 2021 regular meeting.
Thank you. And our city manager, Mr. Harvey, you have some certificates of appreciation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to briefly read a portion of a press release to provide some context for these and then make some brief presentations. On the night of June 5th, 2021 at approximately 1:04 a.m., a vehicle collision occurred at 2100 Sunset Drive, which is also known as the City of Pacific Grove Public Works Yard. A vehicle traveling southbound on Grove Acre Avenue left the roadway after crossing Sunset Drive. The vehicle struck the curb and continued to travel south, crashing through the Public Works chain link fence and colliding with the Public Works building. The collision caused the vehicle and the building to become engulfed in flames. The fire caused major damage to the building and destroyed the vehicle. The driver was the only occupant in the vehicle and he perished in the collision. Monterey Fire Department extinguished the flames, and the Pacific Grove Police Department and Pacific Grove Public Works Department responded shortly thereafter. Tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of the Monterey Fire Department, the Pacific Grove Police Department, and the Pacific Grove Public Works Department for their rapid response, for their care and their professionalism in containing what could have been a much more disastrous event. So I'd like to first just briefly turn it over to the fire chief, Chief Panholzer. Then I'd like to turn it over to Chief Matalone, and then I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Rocky Pinero from our Public Works Department. So Chief Panholzer.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, and thank you, members of the council and the mayor and the members of the public. I was not there at that incident, and I have Division Chief Justin Cooper is on the line this evening with us. He was the incident commander, and I think that this particular incident really reflects the incredibly good working relationship we have between my agency and the Public Works and police departments. We had a lot of good internal knowledge about the operations of Public Works and knew where specific things were in the building, et cetera, and that proved very valuable in making tactical and strategic decisions on how to handle this incident. And I think Rocky probably beat the second due engine in. He was there that quickly, and that just speaks volumes for the quality of personnel the City of Pacific Grove has in the Public Works Department. He was also instrumental in helping with managing the incident and controlling stopping the damage of the fire and the resulting rest of the consequences. Was there all night, and then I think in the morning he was on a backhoe still cleaning up messes and moving things around. And same goes for the Pacific Grove Police Department. It was just a really great partnership. It's sad that somebody perished, but certainly the outcome could have been much, much worse. So thank you for the recognition, and all the credit actually goes to Justin Cooper and the teams that were on duty that night. I'll turn it over to Chief Madelon now.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and members of the public. Well, I wish I went first because Chief Panholzer pretty much said everything from that evening, so thank you there, Gavins. I'll just echo some of his words. It's just such a pleasure, having come from another agency, to have the same excellent working relationships within our departments, within our staff, working alongside the fire department. And like Chief Penholzer said, Rocky was there. I mean, he was pulling stuff out of the building, and he had that backhoe out first thing in the morning. The sun came up, and so did he. He just stayed the whole day. So I want to give a special shout out to my staff, Sergeant Perez and Corporal Wansinger, who were working that evening, Commander Santos and Detective Murray for coming in. And again, our hearts and our prayers and our condolences go out to the gentleman that perished in the crash. But because of the actions that were taken, it definitely mitigated the loss. So thank you all. I appreciate my staff, and I appreciate working alongside you and your staff, Chief Panholzer. And I know Mr. Go's not here tonight, but he has a fantastic staff member in Rocky, and you know, he's amazing. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Mr. Go is not here this evening, but Mr. Pinero is here. And so, Rocky, I know that you're sometimes a man of few words, but if you would speak to us, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for the recognition. I didn't do anything different. It's just whenever the city needs me and they call me, I always have been there, always will be there. It was nice to work with the fire and police to get the fire out. It's just a training that I had over the years that I've been there. Also, I'd like to thank Arlen for coming in to help get the cars moved. And again, I feel sorry for the gentleman that passed in the fire. That was one of the biggest concerns that I had. Unfortunately, he did pass. But I didn't do anything special. Whenever the city needs me, fire, police, I will always be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Thank you, Monterey Fire Department. Thank you, Pacific Grove Police Department. Excellent job. We appreciate all that you do. Mayor, I'd like to turn it back over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll echo those words of recognition and thanks for all three departments, and as well, in particular, to Mr. Pinero, our building and grounds and cemetery supervisor, who I found there on Saturday morning that he had, as was mentioned, first on the spot even before perhaps the second fire engine, so stayed the whole night and working Saturday morning. And at that time, Dan Go was also their Director of Public Works. So I can't say enough. This is, it's not just a job to these individuals, it's a calling, and and this is what your city management should look like, and come and be on the spot even when it's inconvenient after hours in the middle of the night to take care of things that need taking care of. And it was true tragedy in many senses. So thank you for helping to mitigate the damage. Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you on what you've said. I just, my comment is I waited a while before I went down there to see the what was left of it, and that was around 12. And who was still there since 1 o'clock in the morning was Rocky, Dan Go, and Alden. And they were walking around like it was 10 o'clock in the morning, like everything was normal. So really appreciate their efforts doing that too. So thank you.
Moving on, we'll now have council and staff announcements, and I'll start out on our closed session announcements. Because of the 4 items, we only handled the first one, which is let's see, I'll get the title right. Conference with labor negotiators, that's myself, council members Emilio and Smith. That's in regards to the city manager employee contract amendment, and no reportable action was taken. Our negotiations will continue until the next regularly scheduled meeting on July 7th. I'll turn to our city attorney and city manager. Do you have any announcements to make?
None from my office, Your Honor.
I do not, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and council members, any council member announcements? Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Saturday morning, I met with some citizens in Pacific Grove at a coffee shop, and couple of comments. The magic carpet comment from a citizen, how nice Kent and Dango keeps that magic carpet unbelievable. Kudos to them. I also want to talk about the nice paving job they've done on Funston in Del Monte Park. And plus Pegler Conservatory, which is on Fountain Avenue. It's a ballet studio. And my wife and I attended their ballet performance approximately 2 weeks ago, and it was just outstanding. And they put that together during the pandemic, and it was just excellent. And it's a business on Fountain Avenue, Pegler Conservatory. That's it. Thank you.
Any other council member announcements? All right, well, seeing none, I'll put in a plug for Saturday morning, 9 a.m. at Perkins Park. That's a weed pull and other landscaping activities from 9 to 12 o'clock. And you can email or talk to Amy Colony about that opportunity. Get out in the sunshine and meet some of your community members. All right, and we're now turned to general public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
We do, Mayor. Peter Mountier, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Okay, I think he must have lowered his hand. So I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Robert Rapp, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Robert Rapp. I'm the Development Director for Community Human Services. I just wanted to stop in tonight and thank the City of Pacific Grove for the support that they've given us for our Casa de Noche Buena emergency shelter. We opened the shelter in January of 2019 in partnership with the Gathering for Women. We had a one day where we opened it up. We sent out announcements to everybody we could think of, community organizations, churches, other nonprofit organizations, and let people know that we were accepting applications. In about the first 4 or 5 hours that we were open, we had phone lines open. We had 51 single women or families with children that applied for a space in our shelter. It's typically a 30-bed emergency shelter. We had to open under COVID restrictions at about half that capacity, but the need is so apparent when we saw those 51 people fill out the entire application process in just the first few hours that we were open. It just hit home of what the need was at this shelter. Since we did open in January, we've had 12 people that have exited the shelter. 11 of those have exited to permanent housing. It's a model that's working. It's a shelter that's just so much needed. And I just wanted to thank the City of Pacific Grove and all the cities on the peninsula that supported this shelter and are supporting what we're doing and are providing funding for this what's obviously so needed in this community. It's not a city issue. This is a regional issue. And I just want to thank the city of Pacific Grove for the support that they've given. Thank you.
And thank you for all you do and community human services for those in need. Do we have anyone else?
We do. Peter Mountier, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you, and sorry for the mishap earlier. Peter Mountier, Pacific Grove Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to just announce and formally invite this council and city staff to the Chamber's 4th of July celebration downtown. It will be held, of course, on Sunday, July 4th. The Chamber's held this event annually since 2002. The late Mayor Sandy Kaufman recruited us to do it, and since then it's been a barbecue in the park, Caledonia Park, with live music, bounce houses for kids, and a reading of the Declaration of Independence. It takes months to plan, and we invest heavily in marketing for the event. We've fed 600 people and attracted over 1,000 to the park for the course of the event in years past. It's the only July 4th event hosted by a chamber on this peninsula, and it's been a community favorite for many years. Mo asked me once which of our events is my favorite, and I told him it was this one. So we're looking forward to having a slightly modified version of that event again downtown this year. We're going to be having live music at 3 stages, the Monarch Pub, Mechanics Bank, and Bank of America. We're giving away beautiful Pacific Grove themed t-shirts with a new design, and we're actively promoting it despite it being on a Sunday, which is a tough day for single day events. We did something like this last year, and it was very successful and very safe. And it's our absolute pleasure to put this event on for the city of Pacific Grove, and we hope to see you there. Thanks. Oh, and I'm sorry, 11 to 3 o'clock. And that concludes my comment.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll go to the council approval of the consent agenda, but first, any items to be pulled from the consent agenda? I have one item, the 6A, green waste recovery fees, the franchise hauler rate adjustment. 6A, I'm suggesting we move that to 12A. Right. Anyone from the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item?
I do have a hand raised. Andrew Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Okay, I think maybe I'm a little bit late to this meeting. I probably missed my spot, but like I found basically like a huge hate group that runs through town, and it goes from here to like Salinas, and it's run by the police, and I'm not really sure who to talk to. That's kind of it.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you email city council at cityofpacificgrove.org.
Okay, and that's you guys basically?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right, not seeing anyone else from the public wishing to pull an agenda item. Council member, and so we'll need approval of the modified consent agenda. Council member Tomlinson?
Yes, Mayor, sorry, I was slow on the draw. I remember in the past, we've been pulling 9A. I have a comment about 9A. Are we still going to hear that first? Is that kind of standard?
If you would like that pulled, and let's do that.
Okay, I would. So I move that we approve the consent agenda with hearing 9A first and putting 6A at 12A.
Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. I missed the second. I apologize.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you. Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams? Aye. Councilmembers Emilio,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
Baduri?
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
and Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the consent agenda as amended.
All right, let me just recap briefly what we've just done. We've approved City Council minutes from June 2nd. We've held a second reading and adopted an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2021-22 operating and capital improvement budget and amending the fiscal year 2021 operating and capital improvement budget. Then thank you, Ms. Hannah. And from Ms. Schaefer, we've received a housing monitoring report, and from Ms. Legaska, a core revenue status report for May, and also a check register report for May. Also received my regional meetings report. And we've received the Economic Development Commission minutes from March 11th. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. All right, we'll now go to former item 9A, local emergency actions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. At this point in the pandemic, with the governor's announcement on Tuesday, it's probably appropriate to get some direction from the city council to consider ending our local emergency declaration and reviewing any actions that we've taken during the pandemic that we may need to rescind. I'd be happy to bring that back at the next city council meeting. But of course, Councilmember Tomlinson did pull this item, so I would now defer and cede to her if there's anything additional she'd like to say on this matter.
Thank you,
All right,
Mayor.
well, let's, if that's the report, we'll need to go out to public comment first. Do we have any public comment?
I see no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Tomlinson.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Yeah, I pulled the item because I wanted to ask the city manager if, what do we need to go through to take the town out of the local emergency state where we're able to act in, in different directives. And I don't think it's needed so much anymore. We have weathered the storm. And then I want to think through all the things that I want to clearly undo. There were certain things got tied to the local emergency actions. I listed out a few here. I'll send them over to the city manager, but if there can be a sum up report on what a near term agenda, and then we can take this off future agendas, that would be my suggestion, if my colleagues agree.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Tomlinson, for bringing this up. My only concern is I would want to make sure that before we rescind the emergency action, that it doesn't put the city in a position to where we wouldn't be able to get reimbursements or FEMA money or additional monies, because sometimes that is a criteria in order to receive government funds. So I just would want to double check on that. And also with the governor's orders that he did this week, the Brown Act is still in place until September 30th of this year. And that's with regards to being able to have virtual meetings. So I would want to make sure that we would leave that in place just because we don't know what the future holds. So thank you.
I'll just add that I'm not sure how, if as a city, we remove the local emergency declaration of local emergency, but the state and or the county still have it. How does that put us in in an awkward position. And as Councilmember McAdams pointed out, we need to be careful we don't lose out on some funding. But I think I agree with everything that Councilmember Tomlinson said, that it's a good time to start thinking about how do we unwind measures. Councilmember Tomlinson?
Yes, Mayor, I think, just to be clear, that is all I'm suggesting is let's start thinking about it and doing it smartly. I certainly we don't need to lead the charge if it's not a good idea. And, we can sit back and wait, but I would like staff to start looking at it, for us. So, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Well, that was received the report, so there's no action to be taken tonight on that. So we're moving on to item 11A, ordinance amending the salary classification schedule, administrative technician, Ms. Letitia Livian, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, City Council, Mayor, council members, staff, and community members. In February 2020, City Council approved the General Employees Association MOU, or sorry, Memorandum of Understanding. As part of that MOU, an increase was provided to the administrative technician classification to help bring the total compensation for that particular position to 95% of market median. So as stated, the salary increase has been approved previously through the MOU. However, a salary schedule amendment is the administrative process used to implement the salary change, and a salary schedule amendment must be processed through an ordinance. So therefore, staff is recommending approval of an ordinance to amend the salary classification schedule for the administrative technician classification. And that concludes my report.
Do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Mayor, I see no hands raised for public comment.
Do we have any council member comment? Councilmember Tomlinson?
Yes, Mayor, I move that we approve this item.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we have a Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Livian, is the salary survey available on our website for the public to look at?
No, but it is available by request.
Well, I think any public document's available on request, but okay, thank you.
And I would just add before we have a vote, this applies to, I believe, 5 positions. Is that correct, Ms. Livian?
Yeah, I don't have the total head count for the administrative technician position, but 5 sounds about right.
Okay, okay, I see you. All right, I see no raised hands. So Ms. Kendall, will you give us a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Peak,
Aye.
council members Emilio,
Aye.
Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Kaduri,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
and Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the former 6A annual franchise hauler rate agreement for rate adjustment. Mr. Schneider, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I have a brief presentation, if it pleases the council, for me to start with that. So again, my name is Caleb Schneider, Public Works Environmental Program Manager, and I'm going to speak to you about the solid waste rate adjustment, which happens annually. So what we're going to talk about a little bit of background of our solid waste franchise agreement. go over a couple of previous years just to provide the context, and then go a little bit more elaboration on the current recommendation for an increase. So background, the city utilizes a franchise agreement, which allows us to basically set up a arrangement with a private entity to provide the solid waste collection for the city. In that agreement, it spells out how we go about setting rates annually. There's changes from year to year, so it's something we're required with part of the agreement to address. And there's mechanisms that are already played out in the agreement. If you want more details there are links in the agenda report. But just to go over them briefly, the multi-index method really just looks at, how rates are predicted to change in the future for labor, fuel, equipment, that sort of thing. So the multi-index is, I would say, what is called the simplest. There's the cost-based, which involves looking at the actual records of tonnage and number of employees, rates that they are paid, equipment costs, those sorts of things, which so it gets a little bit more granular there. There's an extraordinary mechanism, which means if there's some unforeseen, typically this would be some sort of, new legislation that wasn't known about at the time of the franchise agreement. And that allows us to basically take that into account as part of setting the new rates. And then also a fourth mechanism would be any mutually agreed upon alternative method. And in the past, what's been used is the sector-based weighted average rate adjustment. And what that does is that looks at the residential component, the commercial component, and then the roll-off container component, and changes them individually. And then, as we brought to council several times before, there's the SB 1383 legislation that's coming into, there's kind of another item coming due, which is on January 1st of next year. We're going to need to provide organics waste collection to all residences and businesses. We already provide it to many of the restaurants, but this is now going to be for all customers. So that essentially is the kitchen scraps. We already collect what people are familiar with, the other organic component, which is the yard scraps, but now we're going to include the food scraps component with that SB 1383. And there's going to be some additional costs with that, which I'll discuss in a moment. So in previous years, so the first year, the rates were set based on the agreement itself. So those first years are spelled out in the agreement. And then the 3 subsequent years after that, they did the sector-based weighted average in order to kind of true up each individual market, residential, commercial, and the roll-offs. In fiscal year 1920, Green Waste Recovery invoked the cost-based rate adjustment mechanism. And that process is quite lengthy, and it actually took more than a year to get through that process. So for the FY 1920, there was no adjustment. And so there was a bit of catch-up that happened in fiscal year 2021. And that's where we saw that 31.04% increase. And that was twofold. So that covered 2 years, which was rate period 5, which was the actual rate adjustment for fiscal year 1920. And then there was the rate adjustment that needed to happen for 2021. So those combined, Kate, gave us the 31.04%. So currently what we're recommending is there is a component of the contract that requires, like I said, this rate increase, and we use the index-based method this year, and that increase is 0.7%. So based just solely on that contractual obligation, 0.7% rate increase is what we're recommending. With SB 1383, there's a lot of unknowns at this point, and we're going to be halfway through the year before the fiscal year before it even comes into effect. So we've got to take into account now what those costs may be. So what we've set it at is 1.8%, which gets us to a threshold of cash, which is approximately $65,000, that the city can then use to for SB 1383 implementation. What's beneficial about the mechanism we're using to implement that 1.8% is that allows the city to retain that money, so the city can more precisely utilize those funds to meet our individual community's needs. As a caveat to all this, if, say, we don't end up needing to use those funds can be used to offset rate adjustments for the following year. So we may end up in a situation where X is recommended by the consultants, but we're able to maybe bring it down to less than that because we could use any funds left over from the SB 1383 component of this. This brings a total of 2.5% increase to the rate. And as you see in the agenda report, that equates to less than $1 a month. And as it's billed quarterly, it comes out to approximately $2.75 for the, I would say, typical customer who utilizes the smaller trash can and then the two larger recycling and green waste containers. Now, that's not to say that's the only rate that gets impacted. This is across all rates. So commercial, residential, all different sizes, levels of service, all components of that are going to go up by 2.5%. So our recommendation is to approve a resolution to increase the solid waste fees for fiscal year 21-22 by 2.5%. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, we do. Inga Lawrenson-Neumer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Mayor and council. Obviously, in this rate increase, there is no low income or senior benefit to it. I have reached out to Caleb separately, as I have all along, trying to get something in. And he did email me back saying that, oh, it's a kind of a legal can of worms, which is kind of going to be ending up like the one water that, oh, we can't just really do that. There are all these other implications. So apparently they're still working on it, which of course the huge jump is the one that has killed me and continues to. But as long as believe me, I'm not going away. My income is not going up and I need help. So I'm going to keep pushing on it. And I hope that some method of figuring out the legalities are finally going to somehow be resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment and we'll go to Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thanks, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Schneider, for that great report. I think maybe perhaps this wasn't intended for the consent agenda. The fact that you had the presentation prepared and with so much detail, I do appreciate that. So I'm glad the item was pulled and you were ready for it. And I think that the rate increase, having the optionality to keep it for our own programs, it's good planning. It's smart with the unknown of what we're going to have to undertake to implement the new SB 1383. Is that the right number? I think we can't do anything about the 0.7. So I would rather do this 2.5 now and not just wait to be in the rears and then have to have a large hike increase on our ratepayers. So I support this suggestion from your team, and thank you for the report.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Schneider, for this information. So I'm wondering when the mandate, when SB 1383 is implemented, there won't be an additional increase. Is that sort of why we're getting ahead of it?
That is correct. By establishing this rate now, it allows us to basically collect money for the first 6 months of the year before the physical implementation, because there are things that are going on now, and education outreach, that sort of things are being planned for the fall leading up to the full implementation in the new calendar year. And yes, so this collecting these funds is going to help us get through the remainder of the fiscal year. So there will not be an increase in the rates for the remainder of this year. Sorry, the fiscal year we're speaking about.
Sure. Okay. And then so after that, are we anticipating an increase?
I would anticipate an increase in any year as the rates and indices continue to go up. One item that is kind of lurking in a lot of our minds right now is a lot of the rate-based indices are based on a COVID time. So they're much smaller. So the CPI is much lower than it has been in previous years. And we're already starting to see predictions that those indices are going to increase. So we'll be seeing an increase, not just related to SB 1383, but also just as the market kind of resets itself. Because this is 0.7 is particularly low when compared to a lot of other jurisdictions as well, for even without taking into account the SB 1383.
Thank you. And then just my last question, I understand that it's a mandate, and I think that it's wonderful, to have the option, to throw our compost and have it picked up. But we do have a lot of fixed income. We have a lot of seniors. We have a lot of small households, maybe people that are single. Has anyone talked about perhaps sharing a container on a block or something that, would accommodate these sort of smaller households, or maybe people who aren't going to participate? Has there been any conversations about that, or is it just sort of like the green waste can, where you get it whether you're using it or not?
So the way the rates are structured in our agreement, or the mechanisms for setting those rates are structured in our agreement, it's really important that every residence receives the refuse collection. It's a mandate. We have to provide it. Now, with regards to, I think what you're trying to get at is, how do we help with people on fixed incomes, seniors, low income? That is something that's in my mind. And separately, I'm having a side conversation with our consultants, HF&H, about how other entities have implemented that. And that's something that I'm wanting to keep the ball rolling on that, because about this time next year, we'll have gotten our legs underneath us with regards to SB 1383 implementation. And I anticipate that we'll be able to have figured out the mechanism for establishing those rates. It gets a little bit, it's pretty detailed and technical, and it's kind of outside the scope of what we discussed today. But yes, that is something that I am working on, is a mechanism to establish an alternative rate for low income, fixed income seniors.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor.
Our city manager, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to Councilmember McAdams' question about the potential for a subsidization. I can't talk. The subsidy for lower income customers. Typically, the way that is accomplished in a rate-based environment is there's a fund established, and all ratepayers contribute towards that fund, and then those that are income qualified are able to draw from the fund. However, you have to establish that, and depending on the regulatory body that oversees the utility, there's an approval process. But that's usually the mechanism that's done. Those that are non-income qualified would contribute a nominal amount, and then those that qualify can then draw from it. And typically, there's a discount that's determined. It might be 5, 10, 20, 15% flat rate, or a fixed amount that they pay. So I can certainly talk more to Mr. Schneider about how those types of mechanisms works, but I just wanted to provide that context for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I'll just follow up a little bit on that comment. Monterey One Water did recently the board decided to create a fund to help lower income households basically pay for their sewer bills, and they used PG&E as a means of qualifying it. Their PG&E has a program that they would leverage off of. Thank you for the report, Mr. Schneider. I did kind of key off the one remark where you said if we collect too much, it's possible that some of that would get reallocated or refunded. Did I hear that correct? This is for the SB 1383 collection.
Yes. So any funds that are left over, at the end of the year, say for some reason we over projected how much we're going to use, those could be used to offset an increase in the future, because that money that the city retains, the mechanism in the contract that allows us to retain that allows us to use it for any component related to solid waste. So what I will put out a hypothetical. Let's say, it was a 4% increase is predicted for next time. If we have enough in the funds, we might be able to knock that down certain percentage points. So 0.5%, 1%. Again, that's all hypothetical, just numbers I'm pulling out right now, just to set an example. But yes, those funds will continue to be used to utilize for solid waste collection services and fees.
Great. And the service provider is presumably keeping track of that fund balance and whether we're matching projections. Is that correct?
So the nice thing about that mechanism is it is a fee that is collected as part of the regular bill. So in effect, it is a 2.5% increase, but as it's actually written into the agreement, it's a set dollar amount. So what people are going to feel is a 2.5% increase. The 1.8% of component of that for SB 1383, that's going to come through directly to the city, and the city is going to hold on to those funds itself. So the city will have full control over those funds and how they're utilized.
Oh, okay. So basically we get remitted those funds through our service provider's billing process.
Correct. We already receive funds regularly from them, so it'll just be through those same channels, but it'll be earmarked and tracked separately.
And presumably we'll get regular reporting on that fund balance to know how good we're doing as far as projections of meeting what our rates were set at to keep the fund balance whole.
Yes, I anticipate my goal, I'm fairly familiar with the financial software, that my intent is that money would be collected and represented in our accounting. So that way it's easy to track, and anything that is charged to that, you'll be able to track through our normal accounting means.
Perfect. And one last question. Thank you very much. Do we receive this remittance quarterly, monthly, bi-monthly? How often?
Quarterly, because that is how that's billed.
Okay. Thanks very much.
I want to add my thanks to Mr. Schneider. Your report was very clear, well written. I always like to follow the money, and your report did that very well. One question I had, I think you've already answered it, and you stated that this will be the only rate increase for this fiscal year. So the next rate increase won't happen until July 1st, 2022.
That is correct.
Okay, that's good. And is there in the works a franchise agreement amendment with green waste recovery pertaining to SB 1383?
Yes, there will be two more items that will come before council. One is going to be an amendment to the agreement with green waste recovery, which will incorporate all the components of SB 1383, which is where some of the funding goes. The legal teams and the groups that meet, and we have to fund those groups of consultants to provide us that language, template language that then our legal team will specifically review. So there's the agreements with that we'll have an amendment to. And then secondly, there'll be changes to the municipal code, which help us be able to enforce some of the statutes set forth in SB 1383.
Okay, great. And when do you think approximately those two items will be coming to council?
At the earliest, it would be July, but I would anticipate probably somewhere more like August, the second meeting in August. But it's okay if it happens later, because these are the effects of these changes aren't going to be needed until January 1st of this next calendar year.
Okay, great. And you've mentioned negotiations, obviously rate increases. There's some within the scope of the contract. There is some negotiations with Rate Hauler. Who is representing Pacific Grove with these negotiations?
Predominantly, we rely on, so for this year, the mechanism is fairly, we've already agreed to it, essentially, for the first component, which is the 0.7%. So really what the issue with that is we just have to follow the process, and that sets it forth. So there's not really much back and forth, but our consultants do go through the numbers and check them against other other groups in the industry. So they check it against other groups' rates and how they're increasing, and you know, they're looking at costs in the broader industry for trucking and hauling and solid waste disposal. So there's not really any back and forth on that. For the other extra component, so the 1.8%, that is an amount that in my discussions with HF&H, we determined that there was an amount that we should probably have in our coffers in order to get ahead of any of the SB 1383 costs. So, and this year there wasn't really a negotiating back and forth, but I would say to get to this, your specific question, essentially I have been going back and forth with Green Waste through HF&H.
Well, thank you for taking on that responsibility. Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Thank you. Motion to approve a resolution for green waste recovery rate adjustment based on the agenda report to increase solid waste fees for FY 21-22 by 2.5%.
I'll second that. Councilmember Peduri. It's a second. May we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Emilio?
Aye.
Councilmember Peduri?
Aye.
Mayor Peak?
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti?
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. And the next item is mine, actually, state and federal legislative platform and legislative subcommittee. And let me pull up my notes and well, first off, apologies. It's the legislative platform is a bunch of long lists. I hope you had a chance to glance at that. I don't have slides which would just list everything that's in the agenda package, which was done last year. So, and then we have at that time a council subcommittee who identified those items of interest, particular interest or concern to the city, and wanted to write a letter to a regulator or a state or county official, and that normally would be over the mayor's signature. And that's a two-person subcommittee, and I was the tiebreaker in the case that they had different opinions, but generally that was did not happen. And Councilmember McAdams was one of the legislative subcommittee members, and I'm happy to recommend that she stay on it. And then we'll need a new legislative subcommittee member, a volunteer, if you will. And that concludes my short report. So now we'll go out to public comment on this. Do we have any public comment?
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. Oh, let me add, I've forgotten, I've got 3 pending items that have been brought to my attention. A request of a letter of support for a Veterans Administration pharmacy in Marina. Second one is extending SB 91 eviction moratorium through the end of the year for those in need. And SB 9 Atkins, which concerns ministerial lot splits, which the League of California's cities is adamantly opposed to, as it would take away local control on zoning. So those are 3 items. Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm happy to volunteer.
Okay, well, we're off to a good start, Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank the council members who've been doing this kind of behind the scenes and for their time. And if Councilmember McAdams is willing to do it again, I fully support her, and Councilmember Pedori as well. So thank you.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would love to continue serving on the subcommittee. I enjoyed my time with Councilmember Garfield. And also thank you, Ms. Candell, for getting the letters out promptly. I had a couple of edits though for the legislative platform. And I'm wondering, can I bring those up now, or are you anticipating the subcommittee would come back to get approval of the platform?
If you have them printed, why don't we do it now and we'll avoid another.
Sure, they're just, they're really quick. So just under local control, to remove the 2 bullet points, one is the opposed legislation mandating one size fits all. And then the other one is opposed legislation that diminishes decision-making authority about the land use plan. So in 2019, when these were a little more relevant, we weren't having the state, aggressively going towards affordable housing. So for me, these are just not in line with the way that the state is going. And then also under housing and land use planning.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Perhaps for clarity, could we ask Ms. Candell, because it's in the agenda report, to just point, if you would reiterate which bullet points.
Oh, sure. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, on.
So under local control.
Do you have the, I could get the page here.
Oh, I'm just on the online agenda.
It's just number 1, right?
Yes, exactly. Number 1. And then number 4.
And you're suggesting for number?
To remove number 1 and number 4.
Remove local control, preserving the city's charter city status?
No, number 1, oppose. So the first bullet point under local control.
Oppose, remove.
Sorry, it's the one that says one size fits all.
Okay, that's the 4th bullet.
Yes, and then the next one is the opposed legislation that diminishes decision-making. So it's right underneath it, the 5th bullet point.
And the reason for taking that second one out?
Well, so back in 2019, when these were formed, the state wasn't as aggressive as far as the like density, the parking, you know, all of these sort of bonuses that we're finding for affordable housing. And really, you know, it sounds nice to say that the city has control, but we don't, because if developers are meeting the requirements mandated by the state, then they can go away with, you know, height and parking and all of those sort of incentives that the state is offering for developers. And then underneath housing and land use planning. So we're going to skip fiscal sustainability. So under housing and land use, the second bullet, encourage reasonable building. I would like to remove the word reasonable and at the end of the statement add consistent with the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
All right. I'll ask council members, other council members for comments or questions on your proposal. Anyone like to make a comment? So your motion would be those three items: to remove 2 bullets and modify 1 bullet.
Yes.
And plus, and then we'd have a separate
Form. Yes.
for the subcommittee. Councilmember Tomlinson,
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
please.
Okay, I move that we adopt the state and federal legislative platform with the proposed changes by Councilmember McAdams and a legislative subcommittee composed of Councilmember McAdams and Councilmember Pajori.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Before we vote, I'll just add that I've found out that with little experience that these statements or position statements don't always easily translate into a particular bill that's on the state legislative floor that anyhow, but it does provide some direction, so it's good. All right, Councilmember Smith.
Don't want to hold it up. I just wanted to thank my colleagues for volunteering.
Great. Ms. Kendall, may we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Council members Tomlinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Pajori.
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams.
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti.
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio.
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now go on to the next item, which is 12B, selection of Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Pajori.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't have a presentation. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I think we do not have a mayor pro tem today. And as a result, and one of the things that really, as council members, we need to do is plan for the future in case an event happens. And this, the fact that PGMC 2.05 has been codified, really results in a lot of actions that the mayor is undertaking, like signing financial instruments on a periodic basis. And so I think as a means to like really plan for the future, I believe we should elect the mayor pro tem so that we're not scrambling whenever an event happens to elect a mayor pro tem at that time. So this is just a purely planning exercise, and I would recommend the council to elect a mayor pro tem. Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, we do, Mayor. Inga Lawrenson Doimer, you have the floor.
Thank you. The unmute button didn't show up again.
Welcome.
Question that's, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a question that has been asked and answered. The attorney said, our city attorney said there is no compelling reason, including this mayor signing contracts, no compelling reason to have to elect a mayor pro tempore at this time, not until it's needed. None of this planning for the future. We don't need an honorific. We don't need to further divide any council members or anything else. The time is when it's needed. I don't see any need, and it has been asked and answered by the city attorney. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mayor.
I'm just going to make a couple of comments. Since signing seems to have precipitated this agenda item. And I agree with Councilmember Pedori that it's worthwhile to revisit this issue. In regards to signing, I've been signing ordinances, resolutions, and minutes for about 2 years via email using DocuSign software. And the same process now for contracts. The only one that's different is water entitlement sales, and housing loans require a notarized signature. So I go in and see the city clerk to sign in person. Okay, Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. And you have yet to miss a meeting. So thank you for that. I'm not really understanding what has happened since or changed since the December 2020 meeting, but I think we're doing just fine as is. And we haven't needed a mayor pro tem in the last 2 years. And I don't foresee us having that need. And as we talked before, if it comes up, we'll just decide at that time. So, but as far as because the mayor is signing additional, documents, he's signing all kinds of stuff as it is. So, and we haven't had an instance where he has called onto one of us to help. So, so thank you, Mayor, for being reliable and present and always at meetings. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's been made clear on several occasions that the city charter does not require the selection of a mayor pro tempore until such time as the mayor is absent. As has been mentioned, the mayor signs ordinances, contracts, chairs our meetings, makes appointments. And a lot of the stuff, what he's doing currently, he's able to do remotely. I don't quite grasp the concept that there is an urgency based on the passage of the recent chapter 2.05. You know, the mayor pro temporary is kind of an honorific position. It's political too. I mean, a lot of people, so when we talked about this back in December, the consensus of council was it wasn't necessary. And I don't think it's going to draw this council together. I think the position creates a kind of this tiered hierarchy that the charter does not embrace, and I don't think we should. I think the charter is specific. There are 6 council members, and they are officers of the city. The charter makes no provision to make the mayor pro temporary an officer of the city. If it had, that would have been a vice mayor, but we don't have that. We just don't. So we pick a mayor pro temporary when it's necessary, and I just don't think we really need the divisiveness of this kind of pseudo honorific, as I call it, and that we are 6 council members and we should act accordingly. And so I wouldn't support the selection of a mayor pro temporary. I don't think it's necessary. I think it becomes political and it's more divisive than helpful. And the charter simply does not contemplate the mayor pro temporary as being an officer of the city. It's not a standing position. Now, and I think we should just, embrace that and move on. We made a decision back in December. I think we should stick with it. It's been a good decision, and I would support staying as is. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. In this instance, I do have to agree with Councilmember Paduri in bringing this item forward. I think that we do need to plan. It makes good policy sense in my mind to have a backup, especially in the uncertain world which we live in now. We all know how uncertain the world is, how much anxiety is out there. And I personally, after 6 months during this new term, I have felt at points that it would be a great idea to have a mayor pro tem as a backup. And I think the mayor has been extremely reliable, and that's true, but none of us could have anticipated the last year and 15 months that we just lived either. So I think that we'll be ready. We won't have to scramble. I think that, the mayor pro tem position can be helpful. I think experience is important, and I think that making suggestions at the meeting, procedural suggestions perhaps, things not necessarily policy suggestions are always helpful. And that in my 5 years, 4 years or 4.5, I guess, and the last 6 months has felt like a year just because of the nature of the world. But I think that in my time, the 4 years when we did have one, I think that was a good thing. And it was the experience that Mayor Pro Tem Hewitt had, but also just having someone that is there as a backup, made me feel like more confident. So I also think the Mayor Pro Tem can be helpful. So for those 3 reasons, that having a backup, making suggestions, and being helpful, I think it's a good idea. And I think mainly, Chaps or Councilmember Paduri put it well, planning for the future, having something set, not scrambling around if there is a crisis makes perfect sense right now, given the world that we live in. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Emilio.
Okay. I agree with what Smith and Councilman Smith and Paduri said, but I do have a thought. And I'll use one city locally. The city of Monterey rotates their mayor pro tem. And my suggestion is, as we open up in the business world, in the restaurants, and there's grand openings, there could be an incident where, and I appreciate the mayor always being there, very reliable. Congratulations to you, Mayor. But there could be an incident where the mayor needs to be opening up, let's say there's a new restaurant, there's ribbon opening, but at the same time, on the other side of town, there's something else, and maybe the mayor pro tem goes in there and helps cut the ribbon or whatever it might be. Because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, we all want to be healthy and happy and everything, but this is my suggestion, is that we have a mayor pro tem every 6 months, and that would rotate. And that it would start on the 1st of July, or at the July 7th meeting, someone's nominated to handle it till December. And then on January 1st of 2022, someone handles it for 6 months. And I'm just thinking of what has been said before, but I'm also thinking as things open up, there might be other things that maybe you may need 2 mayors. You can't split the mayor in half, put him on one side of town, the other hand side. So I'm just using this example. In fact, Council Member McAdams sent something out. I think I forgot what city it was, King City. I'm not sure which one it was, but they had a rotational system too. I was reading through her report. So that's my comment.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Okay. I just want to support what is going to continue to unite the 7 of us. And that's going through that's like the main core for me. And then I also feel like if I'm driving a car and I'm going too fast and one person in the car says slow down, I'm going to listen, even if the other 4 in the car are fine with the speed. So, I mean, we tried it for 6 months without a mayor pro tem. I feel like our council is doing quite well together and trying to be as united as we can and work well together. I'm open if it's the will to try it with a mayor pro tem. The position, I don't see anything changing really other than we would be a little bit more planned out. If in the event we need a mayor pro tem, there would be one, and we wouldn't have to go through the trouble of picking one of us. I don't want to be the first mayor pro tem. I'll throw that out there. So if we're going to nominate someone tonight, I would like to consider nominating. We'll give it a try. Have it be the person who's been the council the longest, which is Councilmember Smith. So I can go either way on this one, guys. So
I'm going to jump in. I'll just ask the question flat out. Who wants to be mayor pro tem? Could you raise your hand? I only see one hand for mayor pro tem. But I'll tell you, I appreciate the comments from everybody, and I want this council to work together. And if we're going to have a mayor pro tem, I will support Councilmember Emilio's suggestion that we rotate every 6 months. And if other cities are doing the same thing, that really gives me confidence that this is workable. I just, for all the reasons cited, there's the pluses and the minuses. And as far as standing in for particular events, I've sent out some invitations recently to everybody. If you'd like to attend an event, represent the city. I'm not sure whether you all get them, but when I get them, and I'm not going, I sent them all out. Councilmember Pedori has stepped up to the plate and has been willing to attend one of the upcoming events. That we always have several events at our local military installations. So that's where I am at. If we can get 3 volunteers for mayor pro tem, And let's just assign them the 6-month rotation. Councilmember Coletti.
Well, I'd first like to make a motion, Your Honor, because I just don't think this is a good idea. I think it does create division. I'll make a motion that we've, again, forego the selection of a mayor pro tem.
I'll second that.
And can I,
Yeah, Councilmember Pedori.
I would
Discussion
like,
on the motion.
yeah, I would like to propose an alternative motion.
Please.
I would like to elect a mayor pro tem in a rotational policy for every 6 months.
I second that.
All right, let's see. We've got any discussion on the alternative motion, which we'll hear first.
I do have a discussion on the motion, Mayor.
Councilmember McAdams.
Councilmember Pedori, would you be open to a friendly amendment that the rotation would go in alphabetical order?
First name or last name?
Last name.
And now it begins.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that. Like alphabetical order reverse or like
Like ABC, like
yeah.
the alphabet. Like the alphabet.
You can skip C.
Yeah.
Class.
Yeah, I don't see why that should be a problem, but is that are we suggesting that we're not nominating anybody with that amendment, or are we going to nominate somebody but the next rotation would be whoever is in alphabetical order?
No, the rotation would start in alphabetical order. So that would be Councilmember Emilio, followed by Councilmember Coletti, and then yourself, and then Councilmember Tomlinson. I'm sorry, Councilmember Smith, and then Tomlinson.
Yeah, I would say no to that, primarily because out of all of us, Councilmember Smith actually volunteered for the job. So I would say we follow the open nomination right now. And then at the 6-month mark, if we want to decide for an alphabetical kind of like order, I'm open to it.
Councilmember Smith.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the person has to be willing to do it. I don't think we should impose it. So I would definitely support Councilmember Peduri's idea of keeping it at a nomination, and person should be willing to do it. It shouldn't just be everybody on the council.
I'll just add that we can't very well be nominating a mayor pro tem past the next election, which is November 2022. So if it's a 6-month rotation and we've got 6 candidates, well, not everybody's going to be. We're only going to get through three council members. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Can I friendly amend and say that we pick, that we do the 6 months, select someone and select 3 someones, and we'll find out if we have 2 other willing participants here tonight to be those 3. Councilmember Smith, and then anybody else?
I think procedurally that makes sense. So well, let me see. We've got, I've lost track. Do we have 2 alternative motions or 3 on the floor?
Just one.
2.
Just one.
With two friendly amendments.
Okay, I need a scorecard here. All right, so, well, let's talk about let's clarify what is the alternative motion again, and was any friendly amendment accepted?
No.
Yeah, from what I understand, Councilmember Tomlinson, what you're suggesting is we nominate 3 people today. One of those would be elected mayor pro tem right away. The other one would be for the next round, and the third one for the following round. So we're covered through 2022 November. Is that accurate?
That's what I
Okay,
was
good.
suggesting. Yeah.
All right, did you want, Councilmember Pedori, did you want to withdraw your alternate motion so you can restate a new alternate motion?
Yes, yes, I would like to do that.
Okay, please do
So
so.
the alternative motion is that the council would elect a mayor pro tem for a 6-month rotational period. And the council will elect 3 council members to that position today and designate which council member would be the mayor pro tem for the 18-month period.
I still second.
Okay, that sounds like actually 2 motions. Well, the first motion is to elect a mayor pro tem for 6-month periods. And the second motion is to identify who they are.
Can I again like rephrase that motion, if I may? I would like to elect. I would like the council to elect 3 council members on a 6-month rotational basis for the coming 18 months.
I still second.
All right. Discussion on the alternative motion, Councilmember McAdams.
I just wanted to volunteer to be one of the first 3.
Okay, good.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, we don't have the, I think we're still going to need another motion, but let's do the alternative motion first without identifying. Oh, do you want to have include the 3 council members in your motion? Councilmember Pedori?
I would suggest that we first come to an agreement that we want to do this, and then follow that up by who is going to be nominated for the 3 positions.
Okay, so the motion is to elect 3 council members as mayor pro tem on 6-month rotational basis. Is that right?
Correct.
And the second?
It's me.
Councilmember Tomlinson, do you agree?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's try for a vote.
Thank
on the
you.
alternative motion.
Councilmember Peduri,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Absolutely.
Councilmember McAdams.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
I'll register a yes, but you didn't ask me.
I'm
Councilmember
sorry, thank
Smith.
you. Councilmember Smith.
All right. So and now we'll need a second motion to identify the 3 council member candidates in order, please. Councilmember Tomlinson.
I nominate Councilmember Smith, followed by Councilmember McAdams, followed by Councilmember Emilio.
I second
Do I
that.
have it? Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay, without discussion, may we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Peduri,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams,
Thank you. Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall, and thank you for council members for your willingness to work together and get us to 270 votes, and that's impressive. All right, well now Let's see, do we have time? Yes, to move on to 12C, Cannabis Outreach Program. Mr. Harvey, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to share my screen for a brief presentation. Okay, so tonight we're here to discuss a proposed cannabis outreach plan. A little bit of background on this. Cannabis has been in discussion at the city council level for some time, as this council is aware. Some semi-recent discussions include a report from the Economic Development Commission back in October of 2019. The council approved an ordinance allowing up to 2 cannabis dispensaries in September of 2020. Shortly thereafter, there was a referendum effort in November of 2020, which almost succeeded in repealing that ordinance. It was, I believe, 3 signatures short. And then in December of 2020, council took action themselves to repeal the ordinance. So following that, council asked that I come back with a cannabis outreach plan in June of this year. So here we are. There's also an encouragement to take a look at the City of Monterey's Have Your Say Monterey effort on the topic of commercial cannabis, which I did. So I'm here tonight to propose to you an outreach plan, and I want to first talk about the assumptions that I would like to include if we do embark upon this. The first is that this would be an effort for a recreational dispensary and not a medical use only dispensary. Why? Well, simply because either a recreational use or a medical use dispensary outreach effort would be significant and will take a fair amount of time and effort at the staff and the city council and at the public level. And the anticipated revenue from a medical use only dispensary really probably doesn't justify that amount of effort. Another assumption would be that the city council is going to determine if cannabis is allowed, what the number of dispensaries would be, what those locations might be or location, and what process would be required for the selection. Another assumption is going to be that all data and information gathered from the outreach plan will be provided to the city council to help them in their decision-making effort. So what type of approach am I suggesting? I'm suggesting a, if you will, have your say Monterey light approach. This approach would involve a scientific digital survey and a hard copy postcard survey sent to all residents of Pacific Grove. It would involve, I'm suggesting, 2 town hall meetings, one staged in the morning, one staged at night. These meetings could either be virtual or in person. And it would involve community stakeholders, including the residents, businesses, the school district, the PTA, the chamber, the business improvement district, the hospitality improvement district, and others. I'm suggesting a dedicated city webpage, and I'm suggesting that all communication from the cannabis industry and their proxies go through the town hall meeting process, or if it's submitted via email, it be posted on the city's cannabis page under the FAQ section. I'm suggesting no telephone, in-person, or virtual meetings or discussions from the cannabis industry or their proxies with city staff. And with that, I'm able to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have public comment?
We do, Mayor. Andrew Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Andrew Gonzalez, you have the floor. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. I think that that's something you guys should do because, like, I buy a lot of pot in town, and like, it would just be easier to just have a store. Because when you don't do that, like, you meet shady people and you get into big problems, like you wouldn't imagine. it's like a no-brainer. It's something bad's gonna happen if you don't figure that out. It's bad. That's it.
Thank you.
Nico Ania, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for having this meeting tonight and bringing this back to the agenda. I fully support the community outreach program that the city manager, Ben Harvey, outlined. It's very consistent with what the city of Monterey did and is doing right now. What I would like to emphasize is putting together a timeline that could have a RFP process and potentially a winner selected by the end of this year. So going into the 2022 election, you guys could have a ballot measure that would approve a gross receipts tax. Ideally, a gross receipts tax that would be lower than what Seaside is to attract more business and have more savings for your residents. In addition, I'd like to share some of the results of Monterey's survey. Out of the 1,700 responses they got, I believe, 70% said they were in favor of having a dispensary in the city of Monterey, and 57% said they were in favor of having them in high retail corridors, including Cannery Row, Lighthouse. So when Pacific Grove goes to create their green zone map, I do think it should be in the main retail corridors in Pacific Grove. Obviously, with the state setbacks in mind, I also would advise the city to not go over and above what the state setbacks are from schools and sensitive uses, and to follow the mandates of the state instead of going over and above. In terms of tax revenue and gross receipts you could target, what is consistent in Northern California is around 4 to 5% of gross receipts. Anything in excess of that is going to be detrimental to the operator, and a lot of that will be passed on to the customer. As I had said in previous public comments, my company that I am a founder of, NUG, operates 4 dispensaries in Northern California. Collectively, last year, those entities paid well over $2.8 million to various municipalities we operate in. So this is a great opportunity for the city to find a new revenue stream. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it. Good point.
Do we have any
I
other?
see no other hands raised, Mayor. Sorry, I see no other hands raised.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I think the one thing that the referendum taught us is that, and I'm always going to be mindful of this, is that stakeholders cannot be ignored. And I do appreciate seeing in the list of stakeholders on the slides that residents were listed first. I believe that's as it should be. One thing that wasn't mentioned on the slides was, so we're going to work on ordinance. We're going to craft what we think would be something that we want to present to the voters. So my expectation of what this process finally results in is a vote of the people on a proposed ordinance for allowing cannabis sale within Pacific Grove. So I'd like to get that nailed down. Is that your expectation, City Manager, and how this would flow?
Councilmember Coletti, through the mayor, no, because I think the first decision point that needs to be made is whether the city council wants to move forward. And I think that's very important. And that's based upon my research and discussion, particularly with the people in Monterey. This has to be done incrementally. And it's not a foregone conclusion that this council wants to move forward with this. And I think that it's very important that the council receive all the data and all the info received from surveys and from town hall meetings, and makes a preliminary decision as to whether they first want to move forward or not. I don't think, I understand your process timeline, but I think, the decision tree really starts at go, no go. And so that's why this is, a bit simplistic at this stage, simply because we don't know if this council is going to say, yes, please move forward with this effort, or perhaps no, please stop it. We've heard enough and we don't want to do that anymore.
Well, thank you. I mean, but to understand whether we go or no go, I need to know where it's going. And I guess my first question is, okay, what's the end game? Are we going to let the residents decide on a proposed ordinance? So that's perhaps you're not ready to answer that at this point. That's fine. But
I am actually, council member, if the mayor would like to allow that.
Let me continue. So what I need to see is kind of a long-term a game plan, someone mentioned a timeline. I don't know, that may be a good description. But what I see at the end is that the voters decide. And I think that is really how you bring closure to this issue. And I think, so I'd like my colleagues to consider that as a first kind of aha moment. Yeah, that if we are going to do this, we're going to let the voters decide. So that's what I think is important to get really clarified right off the bat. And I know there will be a lot of discussion. There's going to be a lot of people getting involved. For instance, I think we need to get the Planning Commission involved, obviously, for determining, their suggestions, their recommendations on land use decisions to the council. I think it's important to get their input. The EDC, all the stakeholders that were mentioned on the slides. That's a real process. But again, we've got to tell them where it's going to be going. The voters get to decide. So that's something, again, I'm, mentioning Monterey again, and maybe the city manager has some updates on this, but it's my understanding that, and I did participate, by the way, I sat in on the town halls. I did see the voter, the postcard, the survey that went out. I thought Monterey did a great job. But after they gathered all that data, my understanding is that they're still they're stalled in deciding where to put them. So I don't know if they've made any final decision on adopting an ordinance. Is that your understanding, City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to respond
Yeah,
to
please.
that question?
Please.
How about the other questions, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
Great. So let's take a step back before I respond to that second question. The way this is being proposed is a decision tree. It's not a foregone conclusion that this council wants to move forward with cannabis. It's also not a foregone conclusion that if this council wants to move forward with cannabis, that they want it to necessarily go for a vote in front of the public. It could be that way, but it might not be. I see these as decision tree, a decision tree flow, and that's very similar to the have your say Monterey approach. And so I don't want to box this council into the corner at this stage and say if you're going to move forward, you're going to go to a vote at this point, because I think that it's important this council hear and receive the information collected in the outreach plan first, make a decision if they want to go forward, and then if you do want to go forward from there, we can decide, we being you, not me, you can decide how you want to do that. Do you want to adopt an ordinance? Do you want to go to a vote? Do you want to, what's your pleasure? So that's my answer there. The city of Monterey, according to the assistant city manager, who's really kind of spearheading the effort, is on a pause currently. They basically, without putting words in his mouth, he basically said that it was kind of too much at a certain point, and the council really kind of needed a break from this effort. And they are going to come back and revisit it at the end of summer, early fall, and see where they want to go. You know, they've got a couple council members that are from the public meetings, you'll know, on the fence or not really sure exactly how they want to proceed. So that was something I learned, and it was also suggested by Monterey, was, you know, come back at some crucial times in the process, but don't pepper the council, if you will, with multiple decision points in close order, because it's just too much.
Well, thank you. That's my understanding too, is that the city council in Monterey is stalled because they're having trouble making a determination on where the licenses will be located. And that, of course, is going to be the sticking point anywhere. But again, getting back to my initial point, it's important that we engage the public in the survey with a proposed way of proceeding. And that would include, I mean, council needs to determine this. I fully recognize that. I'm simply saying that I would like to see the council, if they do decide to go forward, that they make the determination early on that a vote of the people will be how this will eventually get adopted, and then proceed in due fashion. So I think that is one of the first things we need to discuss, and it's one of the first things we need to get worked out. I'm going to feel strongly about that from beginning to end in this process. One thing I do want to mention, if we're going to have two surveys, you know, postcard and digital, I think it's very important to keep the results of those two surveys separate so that we can understand. I don't want to see them commingled. So that's kind of getting in a little bit into the weeds. But again, if we are going to embark on this, I think it's important to understand where we take it, i.e. a vote of the people, and then start contemplating how we get some of our commissions and boards involved in helping us with their recommendations as well. Thank you.
I believe Councilmember Pedori was next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to thank the city manager for following council directions, getting back to us in 6 months' time with this approach. And it looks like it's a step-by-step approach, which is what I like to just finish one step and go to the next step. I just had a quick question for the city manager. Obviously, have your say Monterey, like they've done a few things. They would have probably seen what actually worked, what did not work. Can we just borrow what worked for them and ignore the rest of the pieces? Thank you.
Councilman Peduri, through the mayor, yes. And so that's what I've tried to do when I've met with the city manager and the assistant manager and the public outreach folks. That's what I asked them, like, you know, knowing that we don't have the resources necessarily to do a full-blown Have Your Say Monterey. What would be a Have Your Say Monterey light, if you will, and that's what I've presented to you. That's what I discussed with them. They felt, based upon their own experience and also knowing a bit about our community as well, that they thought that what I've outlined would probably serve us well and would allow the council to make a decision based upon what the community wanted. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember, I think McAdams was next, then Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. City Manager, for bringing this forward with the information. I really appreciate this outreach program, and I'm just wondering, what does end of summer mean exactly? Because we're already in the middle of June.
Councilmember McAdams, through the mayor, end of summer means that I think this could be launched if the council wants to move. Again, one of the main decision points tonight is, do you want to do this or not? But if you do, I think that we could launch this effort in the August-September timeframe successfully.
Thank you for that. And, you know, for me, I agree with Councilmember Coletti. I mean, I think we sort of need to know what the end goal is. especially if this does go to a vote of the people with regards to the cannabis tax, like in just about every other city. There are deadlines as far as filing the measure, getting it on the ballot. The council would have to take action, getting the wording, et cetera. So, I think to know those dates ahead of time is important to make sure that the outreach that is done is going to line up with that. Regardless if we go that way or not. Like, we don't want to get in a situation where we've missed whatever deadline to be on the November 2022 ballot. So I would really encourage that we as a council understand what those dates are with the Monterey County Elections Department. Something else, for me, I was sort of thinking about the cost of this, and what I've roughly put together is $10,000 for the mailer, up to $40,000 for the city manager spending authority if you need to engage HDL or another consultant. And then I know we paid like $23,000 for Zen City. I'm assuming they would be doing the virtual surveys. So beyond, $73,000, what are you anticipating more? Like, what do you foresee the budget? And maybe if we don't know what that is right now, perhaps the council would want to put in like a not to exceed, just so we don't sort of run into over expenditures. And we have an idea of how much we are investing for the outreach. Thank you.
That sounded like a question for the city manager. Was that? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gaddams, through the mayor. I think that your outline of a roughly $75,000 expenditure is certainly ample. You were correct in your assumptions. The digital survey is included with the Zen City software package we've already purchased. Your estimate of the mailer is approximately what we've determined it to be. There is some unknowns, as you pointed out, in the subject matter expertise area. Because we already started on this effort previously, we do know a fair amount of the answers to questions we used to have, but there will be additional undoubtedly. So probably I would think it's probably closer, no more than $50,000, but if you wanted to be safe, you could go to that higher number of 75, Councilmember McAdams, if you like. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think all great and excellent points. I'm not dying to have this cannabis conversation all over again, I'll be honest. And I'm definitely not interested in having it be a vote of council. So I want it to be a vote of the people. And I think it's very wise to back up that timeline. So when can it be on the ballot? What do we have to do for community outreach to get the community aware of what they're voting on, and inform us, and put the material out there so that the vote will, take place in November, and people will be informed and educated. I think that's the big goal in my mind. And so it's June. I have to imagine we can do the proper outreach in that timeline. I know you all talked budget just now. I would like to know also what is the additional cost to put it on the ballot. There's a fee there as well. But I think money well spent. We as a group already went down the path of with some different council members, and then it got undone. And I personally, if that is a choice, I will vote no to even bringing this open again. I want this to go on the ballot, or we don't do it. So I don't need to know more in order to feel strong about that.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I think before we do anything, we do represent the citizens of Pacific Grove. However, we had a referendum on the ballot with 1,066 registered voters. My opinion is we need to start with the registered voters, let them decide. And if there's a decision made by the 1,000 that went on referendum, if there's a decision on the voters to say yay, okay, then we go through the outreach program. If there's a nay on it, then we have our decision made. So I'm for placing it on the ballot.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I know that, and this could be totally dredging up old things, and I don't want to do that, but was there any discussion about, has there been any new discussion relating to kind of polling? Because the surveys, I remember we had a survey, I think it was a different issue, but I think that it needs to be a little more scientific, the way that if we're going to conduct surveys, then they should be, statistically significant and really just kind of be selecting, different options if we're going to do that. I do think that a threshold question, though, is whether or not we are going to put this on the ballot as opposed to making the decision. And I think the fact that we voted for it once and then repealed it probably answers that question in the affirmative. So, because we don't want to just keep kind of flopping back and forth, and it does make sense with the number of folks that objected to it in the community. So I think I'm there as well, but I just want to make sure that any processes that we do prior to an item that comes before us wherein we're asked to place something on the ballot, we have some information that's statistically significant and not kind of an opinion type of survey, because I find those that aren't always that helpful in the experience that I have. Thank you.
Did I? Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief points regarding Councilmember Smith's. I agree. I think, the best survey, of course, is a vote of the people. And it sounds like we're kind of there as far as that being basically the end game. What Councilmember Emilio mentioned, that's interesting. I hadn't even considered that. You could do this in two ways. You could put a proposed ordinance in front of the people that we would presumably work on with Planning Commission and our other boards and commissions, and of course council, craft an ordinance that we would then give to the people to approve or not approve. Or we could simply just say, put a yes, no question. Shall the city council pursue a cannabis ordinance? Which I think, if I interpreted it right, is basically what Councilmember Emilio was discussing. So those two, that is a different track. If it's the latter, if it's just sending it to the voters, say, do you want this or not? Do you want us to pursue this? You don't need a survey. The survey is the vote. We don't need to engage in anything other than preparing for, the 2022 election. So I think that's something we need to decide on as well. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Harvey for bringing this forward. I'm here in support. I certainly liked everything I heard about the plans for this cannabis outreach. The stepwise, you called it a decision tree, but a very methodical or stepwise approach, making no assumptions at the beginning. I think that's an excellent way to go. I particularly, and it sounds like that there's you have excellent support for aiming for a vote, which would be in November 2022. Also, and maybe sounds like a subtlety, but Councilmember Tomlinson mentioned inform and educate. So this outreach program, I mean, it's always my elusive dream is that when everybody gets informed and educated, then they all come together and agree on a direction. Okay, well, that rarely happens, but at least we should try. So the outreach should definitely educate, obviously not only us, but the public as well as to the choices. And Councilmember Coletti, I think, framed my basic question, and I don't have an answer at this point, is what does go on the ballot? You know, have we written the ordinance down to the last, you know, dotted the last I and crossed every T, and then you vote on that, yes or no, up or down? Or do we do something that is a little more ambiguous and maybe practicality comes into mind? I can think of a couple of things, like, should we be spending, you know, huge amounts of time and money to craft a very detailed ordinance if we don't know it's going to be voted, you know, it's going to be approved by the voters? So, but I think at some point we need to certainly educate and give some direction to the voters as to where this might go. So anyhow, that's as clear as mud in my mind. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure exactly if you supported it, but I'm going to say you did. I support not coming up with a ribbon on it ordinance, you know, a exact ordinance that the people are voting on. I think that's a waste of our time and energy, and we kind of already did that. And there was a lot of opinions. Some people didn't feel heard. So I would much rather have it go on the ballot in a more general sense of, we're looking to know whether you're for or against putting a single-sided cannabis location. I mean, something that's kind of general. And we can even put some of the parameters of where it would be cited, you know, within the locations and some things like that, but not the exact wording of the ordinance. And then if the vote passes in November, then the council would get to work on putting the ordinance together and selecting and doing all that we were doing last fall, or whenever that was, last spring. I really think we should do, I don't want to say minimal, but practical amount of work in order to let the people decide. And the focus should be on getting the message out so that people who are voting understand what they're voting about.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for this discussion. You know, I really agree with Councilmember Tomlinson. You know, she said something that people want to be heard, like they didn't feel heard last time. And so, you know, I think let's definitely engage a little bit of the outreach, but absolutely not draft, spend all, you know, time and energy and effort into drafting the ordinance when, you know, like what Councilmember Tomlinson said, when we don't know if the voters would approve this. So, you know, then as far as like what goes on the ballot, I mean, typically it's the sales tax part of it, you know, and so if we wanted to incorporate additional language, you know, I definitely think that we could, but I do appreciate that we're going about it this way. You know, I think that this is very thoughtful and transparent. And, you know, we didn't get one email, which I thought was interesting. You know, I mean, we didn't get one angry person. And that was refreshing to me, you know, and it sort of was a nod to, you know, this is how it's supposed to be done. So thank you so much.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, if you're ready.
Okay, I'm not sure we need a motion because it's direct to the city manager. Unless Mr. Harvey, you would like a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like a little bit of direction on this because what I outlined is a little different than what's being discussed, which is of course why we're here. But I just want to make sure I know what we're doing. For instance, I'm not entirely clear if the outreach is focused on, whether there should be an ordinance drafted, whether there should be what specifically are we wanting? Sorry, let me take a step back. My outreach approach was much more simplistic, and it was simply, are you interested in having cannabis in town? Yes or no? And if so, some details about that, if you were interested, that might allow the council to form an opinion. What I'm hearing now are some other directions, which are fine, of course. And maybe one is, having a vote to just gauge an interest in cannabis or not, and having the outreach simply lead up to the vote. I've got questions about what election we're talking about. Is this a special election or is this in 2022 November? So I think that this needs to be baked a little bit more, Mayor, if you will, so that I deliver the right product.
Okay. I see 3 hands up. I'm not sure we can get answers to all those questions tonight, but should we give it a try, Mr. Harvey?
Well, or I could certainly try to bring back a follow-up item if you prefer that. I don't want to prolong this, but I don't want to embark on a path that's not the right direction.
Okay, well, let's discuss this a few more minutes and let's see if we can get some clarity around Mr. Harvey's questions. And if we're just spinning our wheels, then I guess we're gonna need to come back at a later time. Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. And maybe this is to the city attorney. I'm not sure, or the city manager, maybe start with city attorney. Who puts who formulates a ballot measure? For example, I'm just using this for example, yes or no for cannabis in Pacific Grove. Who formulates that ballot measure?
It's, if I may, through the mayor, a process that's not just that dissimilar from a draft ordinance coming back to the council. It starts with your staff bringing back a proposal to the council, but the council's what the entity that actually approves placing the matter on the ballot. So the council has to feel comfortable with the words that are chosen. It's a very fine art for drafting the measure. There's a limit of 75 words. There's very complicated word count provisions, but it's staff that brings it back for open consideration by the council and direction to place it on the ballot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important that our city manager has clear direction. And so, if we're not able to hash it out this evening, which, I don't think that would be possible, perhaps we can form a subcommittee that would work with Mr. Harvey. And then that way, they can all come back and yes, Mr. Harvey's nodding yes. Because, with the stumbles and falls that we experienced last time, it is very much our responsibility as the council to make sure that our city manager has clear direction. So that's just a suggestion that I have.
Councilmember Pedori.
Yeah, I would agree with Councilmember McAdams. I think we should just, from what I'm hearing, November 22 timeline is what the council is agreeing upon for a vote. So we just need to backtrack from November 22 as to what the steps are required for us to put it on ballot. And one of the suggestions would be to see what kind of a timeline are we looking at this year for putting the item to ballot next year? I mean, is it September? Is it October? What's the time frame that the council needs to decide? And that could probably be one of the subcommittee exercises as to time frames, etc. Thank you.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Yes, Mayor, I think that's a great idea to form to form a subcommittee to work with the city manager, because I don't feel prepared to cash it out tonight, and I don't know that all the answers are in our orbit right now to give the direction that we need as far as where we're headed. But we've reopened the conversation as we said we would. I think there's absolute consensus that it would go on a ballot if we get to that point, and so, the direction would be to not just commence the outreach program, but form a subcommittee in order to come back regularly to council, I think, with how we're going to execute this. And
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with my colleagues on this point. I think a subcommittee could be useful. We should give it a shot and see where it goes. To answer some of the questions, I do know a little bit about this. We would have up until about June, July timeframe of 2022 to get the requisite language put in place to put before the voters. Statute says you have to have it in the county, sent over to the county 88 days in advance of the election. And there's some other caveats, like you got to decide it at a regularly scheduled council meeting, et cetera, et cetera. But we've got until basically the beginning of summer 2022 to get something worked out. So we've got some time. And a council subcommittee would probably be a good first start. And I would like to nominate myself to be a member of that subcommittee. Thank you.
Councilmember Emilio.
Yeah, I would like to nominate myself to be on the subcommittee.
And I would like one more volunteer.
Adams.
Any council member wishing to join? Councilmember Pedori, I see your raised hand. I don't need to know anything more. You volunteered. Thank you.
Sure. I'm in the prestige of some elite folks over there.
Okay. Looks like we've got our subcommittee. Unless there's further discussion on that, we will need to note. I need a phrase. Well, would you like to be called the Cannabis Subcommittee?
Potheads.
And we'll need a time frame. So all good subcommittees have an end date. I suggest the end date.
Can I suggest 4/20/2022?
I was going to suggest the end of this calendar year, just in case somebody gets burnt out or.
I had to think about that one for a sec, chaps.
He's going to get us in trouble.
I was thinking of the committee being called In High Places.
Okay.
In 6 months, typical, Mayor.
It's our 8 o'clock break, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna make an executive recommendation. We call this the Cannabis Outreach Subcommittee, and that it's formed of 3 council members, Emilio, Pedori, and Coletti, and your term of appointment is for 6 months starting today.
Okay.
And your charge is to provide the city manager with input and direction for the cannabis outreach program, which he's already described to us. All right, Mr. Harvey seems to be thumbs up. We don't need a motion. Well, I guess we do need a motion where initiating a subcommittee. So again, I move that we form a cannabis outreach subcommittee of Emilio Pedori and Coletti for a term of 6 months to provide direction to the city manager.
Second.
I'll second that.
All right, may we have a vote, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Peak,
Aye.
council members Emilio,
Right on, yes.
Coletti,
Aye.
McAdams,
Aye.
Peduri,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
and Tomlinson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. And we'll take a break and resume at 8:30. Thank you. Let's resume. We're now at item 12D, Pacific Grove Bike Night Special Event Status. Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're here tonight just to provide council with a brief update on the bike night event. This is a special event scheduled for, July 9th in the downtown. City Council recently approved it as a city-sponsored event, meaning it is a subsidized event. Since the time of City Council approval of the event, however, city staff has learned of some additional event details that we wanted to share with the council so that you can make a decision whether you want to take any action, whether you want to change the classification of the event, or whether you want to cancel the event. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Hallaby, our Deputy Director of Public Works, who has a PowerPoint and some information to share with you. Ms. Hallaby, please.
Thank you. Good evening, honorable mayor and members of the city council. Just going to quickly share my screen. So as Ben mentioned, this is just a status update on the Pacific Grove Bike Night special event. As he noted, the recommendation is to receive the update and provide additional direction if merited. So as Ben noted, this event was approved as city sponsored at the last city council meeting, which was June 2nd. The event details are listed on the slide as well as in the agenda report. And originally the event was described as slated to align with the American Historic Racing Motorcycle Association Classic Moto Fest, and it was anticipated to attract about 200 classic motorcycles. Again, as Ben mentioned, some additional details were brought to light, specifically that the event is focused on superbikes in conjunction with Geico Moto American Superbike Speed Fest. And then the event timeframe is slightly extended. It is not 5 to 7, but in fact 5 to 9 p.m. Quick note on safety and staffing. It's obviously a priority to us that anytime we hold a special event in the city, that safety is of the utmost importance. And in order to ensure proper event setup and safety, we typically harness police department and public works staff. For this event specifically, from the police department, we'll harness 4 sworn officers and 2 professional staff members. This is the minimum required police department staff for the event. But we will also have 3 additional officers and 2 professional staff members that will be available to work should they be needed. And that need will be determined by the chief and the commander at the onset of the event based on various event conditions. From the Public Works Department, there'll be 3 crew members and various safety equipment. That's our barricades, street signs, to properly close the roadways, etc. Staff is also working on acquiring certain team assistance. This is just more boots on the ground and to help supplement staff and keep costs lower. The event sponsor at a meeting earlier this week also indicated that supplemental private event security would be harnessed. So I want to quickly provide some information on cost as it relates to staffing and equipment costs. We do have 2 scenarios for costing available. This is scenario 1, just over $8,000. This scenario represents the cost associated with the minimum personnel needed for the event. So that's the 6 police department staff and the 3 public works crews, as well as the equipment costs. And scenario 2 is just over $10,000. This is the scenario that represents costs associated if the additional police department staff are needed. Again, this would be determined by the chief and the commander at the time of the event. This is not an option, but a representation of the costs if additional staff are required. So that's just over $10,000. So again, the two cost scenarios, the lowest, the minimal possible cost associated with the event, $8,000, and the higher associated cost if we need to harness additional staffing. So the options has been noted: take no action, continue with the special event, but change its designation to a full cost recovery event, or cancel the special event. And that concludes my presentation.
Do we have any public comment?
We do, Mayor. I see two hands raised. Mr. Mo Amar, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. It's a pleasure to do business and host events in the city of Pacific Grove. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the great service that we receive from Public Works, Police Department, and Monterey Fire. Over the past 29 years, you can check with the department heads. I have always respected the direction of and the recommendation of staff and team members. So last Friday, I met with the Chief Medlon, who called me to her office in regards to the motorbike. The chief stated that her goal is to have a safe and successful event. I totally agree with the chief's objective. Furthermore, I'd like to share with the council a quick reminder that your chamber is a nonprofit corporation. We have suffered just like all businesses did in Pacific Grove. Our revenue this year is half of what it was in a typical year. We're ending this year for the first time ever in a major loss at the chamber. When deliberating this event, I'm requesting the council to consider the fact that we have canceled last year's Good Old Days. We've canceled this year's Good Old Days, which was planned the first weekend in May. Secondly, the Feast of Lanterns, which we do all the logistics for, had been canceled last year, and this year is being canceled at Lovers Point. What does this mean to the council and to the city budget? Is we have actually saved thousands and thousands of dollars by eliminating the two largest events in the city of Pacific Grove. That savings perhaps could be allocated to this downtown event, which is truly an amazing event with major benefits to the struggling businesses downtown, especially the restaurants and the attractions and all the retail shops that will benefit. Furthermore, this will be the first time ever that the city of Pacific Grove has partnered with Laguna Seca Raceway to have an event in Pacific Grove. In closing, I can't thank you enough for your service, and I truly appreciate the sense of humor at the last item that you discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Inga Lorenzen Doimer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate Mo and the chamber's position, certainly. But I didn't hear in any reporting yet about street closures, because at the EDC and at the BID, they certainly, I mean, that was in May and June early that they talked about it, and it was requiring a major street closure from Forest all the way down to the post office, which every time that happens, you can't get to the post office, you can't, there's no parking, you can't, I mean, it's just a mess. But anyway, what about the street closures? Because that is definitely part of city costs too, right? And the fact that, and I still haven't heard it reported, Dan Go was saying in his report that, oh no, it wasn't going to require any. Well, is it or isn't it? Because it was presented twice at different committees that it was needed, and I still didn't hear it tonight, unless I was asleep at the wheel here. But so I'm just wondering about these questions and closing it. And yes, I appreciate Mo's position, but I'm certainly going to avoid it. So what can I say? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrew Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Hi.
So like, I don't know if you guys can see me or whatever, but like, I was one of the most popular students at MPC and then at CSUMB. And I got really, really popular, like even more, when people found out that the police were coming after me. And basically all I want to say is like, I found out that Monterey PD has a lot of good Monterey Fire has a lot of good people in it. Same thing with Monterey PD and all that stuff. But Monterey Fire has a bunch of straight up right-wing fascists, and they're recruiting. And I don't know if
Point of order, Mayor.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sir, you're not to be accusing or slandering city staff. If you have some other comments, please continue, but you can't be slandering people here.
Right. I'm just worried, and I just want everyone to have basically their eyes open. And that's pretty much it for now. Like I have to deal with this the legal way, and I have to figure that out. But just keep your eyes open. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Aikman, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Hi, actually, it's Kim, his wife.
Hi, Kim.
This would be fine. I just want to make sure that we do control the amount of bikes racing around our city, because that happens already now. And so if we have 200 super bikes in the city, we've seen a lot of them, particularly right on the coastline, revving their engines and not only taking away the nice peaceful walks we have down there on the rec trail, but scaring a lot of the wildlife. So if we do have these 200 bikes coming in, I would hope that we kind of control the speeding and racing we've seen along the rec trail, particularly in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. The way I'm kind of understanding this is, this event came in late. It was represented differently. And I don't know the reason why, other than I can just attribute it to, we all make mistakes and some human error and processing and a lot on somebody's plate. We don't have, our rec department lead left and we have a new person. And so in the end, we made a decision 2 weeks ago to support this event as a city-sponsored event. We didn't have all the information, but I'm not comfortable going back on that at this point. It's not fair to the event organizers, the advertisement that's been done, the planning. It's only 3 weeks away. And, then, take that. So just baseline, I really think we should keep this as a city-sponsored event as we decided 2 weeks ago. And then I also think I wish the event the best of luck. I appreciate that our Public Works Department and Police Department is going to staff it properly and manage it properly and has a good understanding of what's needed. So I can feel comfortable that it's going to be a safe and enjoyable event for our residents. I would really very much like to carry this conversation a year from now after we have some data and decide whether it would remain a city-sponsored event and see how it went. But I do not want to pull the rug out from the chamber for the last 2 weeks they were given the green light. So thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Tomlinson on a lot of what she said. I don't think it's appropriate that we approve an event and then 2 weeks later contemplate canceling it. That's for me, that's just a no-go. So, and as I understand it, the original application always stated that Lighthouse Avenue would be closed. I don't know if we got that information at the last council meeting rather. But the application, as I understand it, always contemplated that happening. And I think everyone is in sync now. That's my understanding. You know, if it's the council's will to have it a city-sponsored event, that's fine. And there might be a hybrid option in there somewhere too, as far as paying for services. But yeah, I agree with Councilmember Thomason. We do not renege on this event. Thank you.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree as well. You know, should have, could have, would have. The fact of the matter is, you know, we as a council, we make decisions based off of the information that we're provided. And, you know, just for staff, I would really encourage you, you know, just to make sure that what you are bringing to council is accurate. And just, yeah, I mean, it's so important for us because that's how we're basing our decisions on. So, you know, we can't pedal back. It's not fair. There's a lot of marketing involved with this event. I am open to having it be in the same category as city sponsored, but I agree with Mrs. Aikman, who called in. You know, we have to have a large police presence because we do see a lot of racers, and whether there's cars in town or motorcycles in town, especially over by the Asilomar in the Pico Evergreen area. I mean, they just tear up that area. So, you know, I don't want it to be, we're moving forward city sponsored event, but we're not gonna staff to capacity. We need to staff to capacity. And unfortunately, this is an expensive lesson learned. So, but thank you for providing the correct information.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everybody, what everybody has said. And thing I want to bring up is, it's already been said, but if you watch the NFL football, if you watch it, it's easy to say Monday morning quarterback. Should have, would have done it. But we've already approved this event. And I think at the big picture, you think of how much it's going to bring into our motels, our hotels, our restaurants, our downtown businesses. I think that's very important, especially during this pandemic time. And I think we need to approve it just as we did a couple of weeks ago.
Councilmember Peduri.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something or?
I did. Thank you, Councilmember Dury, through the mayor. I just want to make this very clear to the city council. Your city staff does strive always to provide you with the most accurate and correct information. And that's what we did. And we also strive to correct things when we find out additional information that we weren't provided previously. So I want this to be very clear that this is not because we forgot to tell you something or we didn't ask the right questions. We came to you at that prior meeting with the information that we were provided by the event hosts. And so
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
When was the event application? What was the date on the event application?
I believe it was sometime in May, Mr. Mayor.
What was the date?
I don't have the date in front of me. Ms. Halby might know that.
Yeah, the date was May 5th.
Right, and we heard from council at our last meeting, which was June 2nd. And I believe that on the application, it clearly stated that there'd be street closures and that this was not historic bikes. So, you know, there was a month elapsed between when the application was provided to staff. So let's not mince words. Mr. Harvey?
Mr. Mayor, that's not my point. I just want to make it clear that staff is not, that this was not a failure to bring information. This is what we were told. And so we based the presentation upon what we were told. And I want to just say that.
Council
We had
member
discussions with the event hosts. That's part of what we do when we prepare for a presentation. And that's our job.
I thank you. Council member Peduri.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe this is, first of all, this is a prestigious event for Pacific Grove. So I'm in agreement, and I like the 7-0 votes. Let's keep it going, and we can rectify whatever we need moving forward. Thanks.
All right. I don't think we need to, no, I'm sure we don't need to vote on this. We've already approved this as supporting a full cost recovery event, and I'm not hearing any disagreement to that prior vote. Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering if Chief Matalone is available to just sort of talk about the staffing and security, and if people, if residents are noticing people, speeding in their neighborhood, how they can contact the police department.
Sure. Ms. McAdams, through the mayor, I appreciate the question. So we will definitely be well staffed. We are working also with the CERT team to complement our officers. And as far as speeding goes, we will do our best. We're going to try and block off the larger streets like Pine. That is like a large enough street to basically land a plane. So we want to try and keep them off those type of roadways where they can pop wheelies and drag race and stuff like that. Any complaints, please call the non-emergency line and we will get to it, but we will be as staffed as possible. And I'm hoping that we'll work with Mr. Marr and he will also supplement our staffing with some security as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief. And Mr. Marr, looking forward to this event in our community.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item 13A, City Council Code of Conduct for Council Boards and Commissions. Ms. Livian and Ms. Quinn.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Council members, staff, and community members again. Thank you for the opportunity to bring forward a draft City Council policy for your consideration and discussion on whether a policy on conduct and decorum would be beneficial for elected and appointed officials. As you know, elected and appointed officials are the leaders of our community, and as such set the tone for professional conduct and standards for our staff and for our community. Currently, there is no formal policy on public decorum and conduct for elected and appointed officials. However, many cities across the state have adopted policies on conduct and decorum to help instill public trust in the fair operation and integrity of city government. Now, the provisions are not intended to limit the legal authority of the city council or boards and commissions. Rather, it's intended to reinforce the expectations that elected and appointed officials are expected to treat each other, staff, and the general public with dignity, respect, and fairness. In working with the Assistant City Attorney, Ms. Quinn, we sampled several cities such as the city of Salinas, the city of Palo Alto, the city of Sacramento, and the city of Riverside, and we reviewed their policies to help draft a policy for council to consider tonight. The draft policy is a starting point for discussion and a framework in which council may want to modify to better suit the needs of the council, or maybe simply decide they do not want to adopt such a policy. Again, thank you for this opportunity and this consideration, and this concludes my report.
Thank you. Before we go out for public comment, I want to note that the top of the agenda item, it says that this agenda item was at the suggestion of the mayor, and that's not correct. I did not recommend that a code of conduct be prepared or brought to city council. So I just wanted to correct the record on that. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do, Mayor. Inga Lawrenson Doimer, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sandra. Mayor and council. I sincerely, if you're even considering this, would modify it greatly. This is such a heavy-handed dictator, punitive ordinance. The approach is to stifle any transparency and control all methods of communication. It's like you can't dictate respect. It has to be earned. And as far as your civility to each other, I think that's going along fine. And as far as to the public, well, yes, we'd appreciate a little more. But I don't think that this is needed. I think that any censure or that is covered in our charter. It certainly, the charter tells us how we can communicate to and with staff. I just don't even see where this came from, because it is not what I want to see in the city. It's really heavy-handed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa Ciani, you have the floor.
Welcome.
Thank you. I feel that a code of conduct is a really important policy to have. I guess I haven't looked at it as carefully as Inga, but I think it's a good starting point in any case, as Ms. Livian said. And you know, with the current council, for instance, I don't have complaints. I really appreciate the respectful behavior, but in past councils, I certainly have had deep concerns, and there was nothing one could really do. So I think it's important to have a policy like this to give everyone a sense of the ground rules, what is acceptable basic behavior. There's a case going on in San Francisco City Council right now, which is pretty sad. A council member who has done some very fine things, I don't know his whole record, but they have something to work from. I think it took them a while to enact it, to act on it, but it's a very good thing to have. So I appreciate that it's being discussed, and I do hope that you will approve a code of conduct in one form or another. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't know if I can take the claim that this item was because of me, but I definitely had a conversation with Ms. Livian about getting us a code of conduct. So I appreciate this work that's been done, and so maybe I can claim that if people are wondering where this came from, that I think it's a great idea that we have a code of conduct. A lot of other cities have it, and the League of California Cities recommends it. That's where I read about it, and I realized we didn't have one. You know, I'd like to go through it with my colleagues. I mean, 2 of us or 3 of us sat down and talked about our values and as a city, and there were lots of great collaboration on how we are expected, what our kind of norms and expectations are, as we did our mission statement and our values and whatnot. So I thought we could carry that further and have it spelled out for a code of conduct for how we operate. I think it's very normal to have within many organizations. I'm open to some suggestions and changes and removal of things that people find that it offends them potentially, or I don't know, that's how the public comments we just heard, but I'm not sure if anyone on council feels that way too. But I think this is a great start, and overall, I would like to put this in place for our city.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. There is nothing wrong with the code of conduct. But for me, this is not the policy or the direction that I would like to see us go in. When I was researching what we have already in place with various handbooks and policies, this policy is very much a duplicate. It is a hodgepodge of what we have as far as existing council policies, the employee handbook, the board commissions and committees handbook, our administrative policy and procedures manual, and then also in the municipal code, there is a chapter called council. And recently, we revised our core values. So really between all of these various handbooks and procedures and manuals, a lot of that is already covered. And then as far as like the meeting decorum, chapter 2.04, the chapter council, it covers that, and it covers procedures and penalties for council members who are disclosing closed session materials. It talks about the prohibition of confidential communication disclosure and so on. So for me, what I really do not like about this policy is putting enforcement in place. There's nothing that prevents us now from censuring each other as a council. And I hope that we never, ever do that. Our municipal code 2.04.070, it already speaks to the procedures and penalties for a council member if they disclose closed session matters. There is no good to come out of the council reprimanding and censuring each other. Quite frankly, it's the opposite of the work that I have been trying to do with my colleagues as a council. I mean, we really need to be working collaboratively. And for me, there's just too much interpretation. And I don't want us to have a policy to fall back on if and when we want to reprimand each other. I mean, there's no time for that. So I am for a code of conduct if it's presented in a positive manner, but I'm not a child, and neither are you all. And I think that, as a council, we're very amicable. We do have difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, I think that we're all striving to do better and be better and serve our residents. So thank you, though, for bringing this forward. But I can't approve this policy as it is. It's too negative, and there's just too many issues with it that I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, my problem with this council policy, this proposed council policy, is that it didn't come from council. It's and not to say there aren't some good things. When I read it, the beginning all sounded very reasonable, but it's when you work your way down towards the end, there is some heavy-handedness involved as regards to basically putting council in a box and how they can interact with staff, how enforcement will be issued. And there are even some legal issues that the enforcement mechanisms prescribed are even lawful. So I liked about 2/3 of this document. and about the last third, I had some problems with. So what I'm going to suggest is that council get involved in developing a council policy. And that means a subcommittee to go back, look at this document, find out exactly what we want out of it, instead of having it kind of, presented by others on, it's, like it says, it's a framework. It could be a starting point. That's fine. But now it's in council's hands. And council needs, in my opinion, and I would make the recommendation that we do this, is form a subcommittee to basically get it right. Get it so it reflects what our values are and what we want to see. And like I said, I think there's some good stuff in here. The first 2/3 of the document were fine with me, but I think there are some enforcement issues that go way too far. It's, we're not here. This is not the Salem witch trials. So I would strongly suggest that we form a subcommittee to work out the policy that we want to implement. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. On this one, I do have to agree with a lot of what Councilmember McAdams said. I don't think I can support this policy for a couple of reasons. One, we've created a lot of policies lately, and it's going to be pretty difficult to try to comply with all of the different requirements that we had before we started creating these types of policies. It's hard enough before when you're just dealing with California law and other regulations. But then if you add this kind of thing on, and then you add the layer of the board chair having to, the mayor in this instance, having to enforce the policy, puts that person in a difficult spot, whether they want to be in that spot or not, of trying to interpret what's what and what happened. And I just think it leads, as Councilmember McAdams had said, it leads to down the road of kind of spending time on these issues that, as you can see from our agendas, we're having 6-7 hour meetings. We're trying to do all these different things. And we probably don't have enough time right now to do everything we would love to do in our best world. So that, to me, it's just more kind of layer of bureaucracy. And I think we need to kind of dial back on that. And I wouldn't support a subcommittee for this. I think that, I would just go with all of the various policies, the labyrinth, or all the policies together as they exist, and try to follow what we already have, try to improve what we have. But I wouldn't try to continue to form conduct policies, because we've done that a few times in this term. And I just think that we need to, as Councilmember McAdams put it, we're not children. We're which is probably debatable for me from some folks, but I try my best to be an adult and behave. So we're not children, and we need to treat each other with respect. And I think that's basically what this says. And so I'm gonna depend on my colleagues to do that, and I'll try to do my best as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Paduri.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a quick question for Ms. Livian. Ms. Livian, this first of all, there's a lot of information in here to actually digest at the same point. In your views, so whatever was prepared, do all of these exist in other cities as is, or have we tweaked something in here? So if I just pick any policy in here, any kind of line item, it's there in a certain city, then is that a fair statement?
Yeah, so we pulled mainly from the city of Salinas's policy, but we did make some tweaks for our city.
Okay. But we tweaked it again based on other city policies. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So my view is, first of all, I think a code of conduct, every organization I've worked with, we've had a code of conduct. So we should probably have a code of conduct as well. So my view is we should start there at least. Now, The extent of what needs to be in the code of conduct, probably we need to review that. I think there's a lot of information in here. To me, it sounds like, I mean, they look workable, but I'm not looking at it from a legal eye. So if the city attorney or someone has reviewed this, is okay with it, I'm okay with it. Maybe I can ask this. Sorry.
Okay, Councilmember McAdams, then Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that I would like to make a motion to table this item.
I'll second.
Let's see, our deputy city attorney is here. Is the motion to table, is that debatable? Ms. Quinn? Mr. Laredo?
A motion table is not debatable.
All right. May we have a vote, please? Ms. Kendall, are you with us?
Oh, sorry, I did not unmute myself. Council members Emilio?
I just need clarity. This is to be tabled? Is that the motion?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
No.
Councilmember Coletti?
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams?
Aye.
Councilmember Paduri?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson?
No.
Mayor Peak?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2. I'm sorry. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-3, thank you. To
All right.
table this matter.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Tomlinson.
May I have I have a question. To table it means to like bury it forever, or is it just done, gone, like bring it up maybe another time, see if it takes, or what does table it mean exactly?
Let's turn to our city attorney to give us the definitive answer on how to table, or what is a table.
You can either table something for a period of time, or you can put it on the table without it for an uncertain time. The motion was for an uncertain time. There is a process to take it from the table, and that would be by motion. So anyone that would like to reconsider this at a future time should bring that as an agenda item to take it from the table. And then if the council did approve that, then it would come back for discussion.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're now moving on to our last item on the agenda, which is 13B, fuel management and evacuation.
Thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Kendall, would you mind bringing up the presentation?
Will do.
Thank you. So there's a couple of reasons why I brought this to council. One, we haven't really had a discussion or an update in quite some time. Fire season is here, and also later in the presentation, there is just an information component for our residents that are watching. So just some background. January 24th, 2019, there was an evacuation planning summit that was hosted by the city of Monterey, and I believe our mayor attended that. And that was sort of coming off the Paradise fires. April 3rd, 2019, the City Council was provided an evacuation preparedness update by our Fire Chief, Panholzer. And then April 13th, 2019, they did that test of an emergency evacuation route. And I don't know if you remember, but the Presidio actually opened up their gates and allowed a few hundred cars to do a practice, which I don't think was very successful. I mean, they had some hiccups and I think couldn't get some gates opened and needed to trim some hedges, et cetera. But it was good that they did the run through. The next slide, please. Ms. Candell? Oh, I think you skipped one slide.
Sorry about that. It's doing. Oh, how about, is that the one?
Yes, thank you very much. So February 5th, 2020, almost a year later, I requested and received a fuel management plan from Chief Panholzer. March 19th, 2020, the stay-at-home order was issued for COVID-19. Then almost a year later, I requested and received another follow-up fuel management update from Chief Panholzer, and those communications are included in the agenda report. But really, you know, since 2019, there's been little to no movement regarding our City of Pacific Grove evacuation plan. There was also talk of a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan and update on the safety element of the City of Pacific Grove's general plan. Next slide, please. So 2020, as we all know, was a really, really difficult year as far as wildfire goes in Monterey County. We had the River Fire, the Dolan Fire, the Carmel Fire, and the Coleman Fire, which burned over 180,000 acres in Monterey County. Next slide, please. This is a map that is on the CAL FIRE website, and it shows the very high fire hazard severity zones in LRA. And LRA stands for Local Responsibility Areas. And our in Pacific Grove, so the red area, the very high fire hazard zone is up near Del Monte Park. The next slide, please. So as far as our residents go, you know, we haven't seen too much with fire insurance policies being dropped and not written in Pacific Grove. Rates have increased though, but in Carmel Valley, Carmel Highlands, Big Sur, Skyline Forest, and some of Pebble Beach, homeowners are having challenges getting policies written and or renewed. So there's a lot of information out there how you can prepare your home or prepare your defensible space. And these are just some pictures showing where the ground on the floor, which typically is the fuel, is cleaned up. So this is some examples of fuel management. Next slide, please. So the City of Monterey, the fire department, they have a fire prevention bureau. There's the phone number and the website, and they have excellent information how you can prepare your home and make your defensible space. Next slide. They also have a fire defensible status map. And what you can do is the first arrow you would move your mouse over to the city of Pacific Grove. On the second arrow, you would find your street, and actually a window pops up. You can also type in your address. And then down below the third arrow, it is showing the address and if the fire department has done their annual inspection. So that's how they started in June. I'm not sure if they have reached Pacific Grove yet, but they will leave a little note on your door, and then you'll be able to go to this website. Next slide, please. You can also sign up for alerts. There's a couple of options. Monterey County itself has Alert Monterey County. And then also CAL FIRE has their own alert system. And that's at incidents.readyforwildfire.org. And you can also sign up for text messages. And all this is at the CAL FIRE on their homepage, and then alertmontereycounty.org. They're tied in with a Nixle system, and they also have text messages as well. Next slide. So really this evening, I wanted to bring up fuel management and evacuation. I think that it's a very important topic. It's something that, we haven't heard about or discussed in a while. So, do we want to create an evacuation plan? I understand that Monterey County was working on something, but obviously it's been a few years. So do we want to still wait, or do we want to maybe move forward? Some cities also have engaged with their own One Call Now or Nixle notification system. I think, for me, I try to keep in mind that we do have a lot of residents that maybe don't have a smartphone and are still using landlines. And also we have a lot of residents that are homebound and don't drive. So, some cities do have a registration, or even neighborhoods will sort of put together their own plan. Is ongoing funding needed from the city to support fuel management implementation? And this fourth question, how much fuel management is provided in the services agreement with the Monterey Fire Department? The city manager earlier this week said none. So, that's something that, we need to have clarity on, and we need to have some better understanding. The next slide, please. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Do we have any public comment?
I do not see any hands raised for public comment, Mayor.
Council discussion on this item. Well, I'll start off since I don't see any volunteers. Thank you for bringing this forward. And as I recall, yes, certainly it's been at least a couple of years. The county apparently is the agency that's best in a position to provide evacuation plans, not only for Pacific Grove, of course, but would have to be an evacuation plan for the entire peninsula. So Carmel, Pebble Beach, Versailles, Delray Oaks, Monterey, Seaside, Sand City. So we'd like to see some Monterey County, the OES, come and tell us what is the status, and maybe Chief Matalone or Chief Pansholzer can come and tell us, do we have a plan? I'm assuming we do, and what are the weak points of those plans that need to be improved. And in terms of fuel management, we've talked about fuel management from time to time on George Washington Park. And our fire chief had indicated that he was going to bring back or be hiring a specialist in that area, but I don't think that has happened. Maybe Mr. Harvey, do you want to give us an update?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. And actually, Chief Penholzer is at this meeting, and I think he's probably best to answer many of these questions. Chief, could I lean on you for some of the questions that you heard, please?
Absolutely. First, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this item, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. With the question of the county evacuation plan, that was initiated after we held that evacuation summit in Monterey. It had a pretty good steam going, and then like so many things, it got sidelined by COVID because the entire OES staff in Monterey County was committed to staffing the EOC for that event. Since then, the individual that was in charge of developing the county planner that was in charge of developing that plan has also retired. It has been reassigned to a new planner that was recently hired for this purpose. A lot of progress has been made, and actually some progress came out of the fire situation last summer because evacuations did take place in portions of the county. And as a result, a lot of the evacuation zones have been identified in the county. The entire peninsula already has all the zone maps drawn up. And so there are still a few jurisdictions that haven't responded, but they're not on the peninsula. I can't speak for sure to which jurisdictions haven't yet weighed in on the evacuation zones. But that was probably the biggest hurdle that had to be overcome to finishing up the plan. There was also a section on functional and access needs that was being addressed as well. I don't know the current status of that plan. I am on the group that is developing that plan, working with the county, and I have not received a recent invite or update on that, but I'm happy to reach out to the county and get kind of a status update for you on that. With respect to emergency notification systems, the City of Pacific Grove pays into the cost of the Everbridge system, which also is the Nixle. They're two different aspects of the same product. And it's fully available for the City of Pacific Grove to use, both platforms. The benefit of being on the county-wide platform is that typically the people in the City of Pacific Grove, which would be members of the police department or members of my staff that might be in a position to issue alerts and warnings, will be very busy with the incident, and we can make those requests to the county to do those warnings on our behalf. If we had our own system in Pacific Grove or on the peninsula, then they wouldn't be able to access that system on our behalf and issue notifications and alerts. So that is currently available and functioning in the City of Pacific Grove. With respect to the question about fuel management implementation, as I've shared in the past, the fire department does not do fuel management work. We make recommendations for fire safety, and we work hand in hand with foresters. But the key to keeping a forest environment safe is to make sure that the forest is healthy. And I don't have the expertise myself or on my staff to make those kinds of determinations as to what's appropriate measures to take. I know that the Public Works Director has prepared a proposal to hire somebody to come in and do a specific plan for George Washington Park that was sidelined due to lack of funding. I don't know for sure if that's being brought forward for next year as part of the capital budget, but it should be. I certainly support that effort. That's the right approach, because then you maintain a healthy forest. And it's, as you well know, because that George Washington Park has been discussed numerous times in front of council, it's a very two-sided issue. There's those folks that are very concerned about the fire safety and want lots of fuel clearing, and there's the folks that are concerned about the natural habitat and want no fuel clearing. And so somebody with the expertise in those areas needs to develop a plan for that. And yes, ongoing funding needed from the city to support fuel management implementation. Fuel management is an expensive process. We have in the city of Monterey, we're spending about $300,000 or $400,000 a year on fuel management. We have some larger pieces of real estate that need it, but it's very, very expensive to do. We currently are doing, we work closely with the Pebble Beach Community Services District. We meet with them on a regular basis about fuel management in adjacent areas. They recently, I don't know if it's been done yet or not, but we recently agreed once again that they will, when they bring their goats in, they will let them roam throughout the entire Rip Van Winkle area, including the portion that's in the city of Pacific Grove, so that there's a consistent fuel reduction in that entire area. And I welcome you to go look at what that looks like, because that is a very well-maintained area. And they've also recently done a lot of work right adjacent to Highway 68 on the exit path out of Pacific Grove, not in the city, but as you go up the hill up towards the Chomp and out of town that way. And as Councilmember McAdams mentioned, we do also an annual fuel inspection, defensible space inspection. And that program started at the beginning of this month. And yes, we've already done some work in Pacific Grove. I can't speak to exactly what the status is, but you can pull up the map as was displayed in the slide presentation there. And any parcel that has a coloring is one that's already been inspected. If it passed the inspection, it'll be green, and I believe it's either orange or red if it needs some work. And any parcels that get identified that need work, then the fire prevention division follows up with the homeowners to ensure that the work gets done necessary to create a better defensible space. And so that's an ongoing project that we usually typically do in about June, because you don't want to start doing that kind of work too early in the season. Our annual grasses here still grow all the way into June. May is still a pretty strong growing season for them. So if we did it in May, we may have to come back and do it again because many of the grasses will have grown back. I think that I might have answered all the questions that have been put forward, but if there are any, I'm happy to field them as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple questions for the chief. You brought up George Washington Park, and that was kind of where I was headed as well. I believe the mowback line has been increased to 30 feet where it used to be 20 feet. Is that correct? The weeds are being cut down 30 feet back from the curb where it used to be just 20?
I don't know for sure what the answer to that is. That's primarily driven by Public Works.
I believe, okay, thank you. I believe that's what I've been told. I drive by every day. I go along Alder on my way home. And quite frankly, they've been doing a good job. It looks really good. You know, I think I've heard the weeds aren't as prolific or as high, I should say, due to the drought. But I believe the mowback line is further in. It looks like it's been done well. I know in the past, I don't think I've heard anyone say no fuel clearing. I don't think I've actually ever heard that. What I have heard is that the environment shouldn't be worse off after the fuel clearing has occurred. And there were a couple incidences where it was, you know, it was a mess. So, and that just, you know, that man, I tell you, that takes the wind out of the sail of the volunteers who go in there and do the weeding and care for these saplings, these young pine trees that are trying to gain a foothold, when it's just, you know, it looks like a World War I battlefield after some of the fuel management, efforts have taken place. So I guess what I'm saying is this year I'm seeing it looks good. You know, the 30-foot mowback line looks good. I will mention, you know, we do have a health and safety element. That's chapter 10 of our general plan. If you read it, it is like woefully inadequate. It's like one of the weakest sections of our general plan. We've got the general plan was was implemented in 1994. Some of the elements haven't been updated since then. Some of them have, for instance, our housing element. But that health and safety element, it's bad. And, you know, nowadays people are replacing a health and safety element with a disaster preparedness and safety element, which is pretty much what Councilmember McAdams is asking us to kind of be mindful of and consider. That would be an effort, but I think based on where we're at in our current general plan, it would make a lot of sense to do it. I do believe the chief mentioned a specific plan for George Washington Park. Maybe the mayor can answer this. He knows better than I, but I believe that is a funded CIP project this year. So hopefully that'll get started at some point. But people do focus on George Washington Park. It's interesting that it's not on the map, but at any rate, the map that Councilmember McAdams showed. But I would like to see that go forward post haste. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate Chief Vance Holzer. Thank you very much for your insights. You covered a lot of ground. Of course, Councilmember McAdams covered a lot of the ground too. I definitely would like to hear more about the status. Just to pick one thing, I guess there's about 5 or 6 topics here, all interrelated, but I definitely would like to hear more about the status of the evacuation plan, and also I think, if my memory fails me, but I believe we've heard about the Everbridge, the Nixle Everbridge. I guess it's a reverse notification system. But if we could get an update, something also that we could push out to the public. We've got a system in place. I mean, those two things, the fuel management in particular for George Washington Park and any other area that Councilmember McAdams thinks we need to focus on. Let's get a direction on that item alone. That would be my suggestion to staff. Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, if you could tell us with the other cities or special districts that you serve, what do they do for their overall fuel management plan, citywide? I mean, obviously the city we have roads and easements, et cetera, parks that we have to maintain. So who is that person when a city does not have their own fire department?
In Monterey, we have a city forester, and actually we're in the process of hiring an assistant city forester right now. And that's the person that has the expertise on tree health and forest health, et cetera. I work very closely with that individual in making fuel management decisions. Predominantly, he's the one that develops the spending plan and that decides where and when and how the fuel management work will actually get done, along with staff from the Parks Department. The Parks maintenance folks work very closely with him as well. So it's predominantly in the city of Monterey, it's predominantly in the forestry department. In the city of Carmel, it's the public works director that oversees it, although they also have a city forester, so it's kind of a joint effort between the two of them as well. So it's typically in most jurisdictions, parks are managed by the Parks and Recreation Department, in a very general kind of sense, and if they have a city forester on staff, then certainly that's the source of expertise for the whole forest health management, which includes fuel management.
Thank you.
I want to jump in. When we say fuel management, putting aside the annual inspection of all the parcels across town, when we talk about fuel management and the forester, my vision is a forest, which is like hundreds of trees. And are we talking about something that's like 3 trees there in the median, and that requires fuel management? Like, well, for instance, the green belt between Upper and Lower Lighthouse Avenue, between Erdley and 12th or 14th Street. Is that an area that would require the expertise of a fuel management specialist? Are all the green belts in Pacific Grove, do they all require a fuel management specialist?
Mr. Mayor, it's not necessarily a fuel management specialist. It's somebody who specializes in the health of plants and forests and trees, et cetera. So typically that falls on a forester. And yes, a single tree in a public area should be evaluated by a forester as to whether or not it needs to be pruned, whether or not it needs to be removed and replaced, or all the care and feeding of trees falls under the direction and purview of somebody who has expertise in that. By maintaining all the trees in the various locations throughout the city in a healthy condition, you're managing the forest that is Pacific Grove, because a good portion of Pacific Grove really is a forest. It gets a little more challenging because many of the trees are on private property, but that's why you have ordinances to regulate how private property owners deal with their trees, so that it's consistent with maintaining a healthy forest environment in the entire city.
Well, thank you for that explanation. I'm not sure I'm much wiser, though. It doesn't sound like an easy subject. We do have a city arborist, though, that's full time. But my impression is he's very busy. I'm sure our city manager can confirm Al Weisfuss is fully engaged. Well, I'd like to hear some directions, perhaps give it some thought with this input of what we might need to do in the area of fire safety and fuel management that we're not already doing. But anyhow, that's my thoughts. Councilmember Coletti?
Maybe send that question to the NRC and see what they come back with any recommendations on. I got a feeling they've got something to say about it.
Okay. All right. If there's no other comments, this is have a concept discussion, which we've done. How much clarity we've gotten may be debatable, but we've definitely had this conversation and raised awareness. So if there's no further discussion on this item, that ends this particular agenda item, and that brings us to the end of our agenda tonight. I want to thank everybody for their participation, and wishing all you a very pleasant rest of your evening. Meeting adjourned.